handle the organizational issues and the committee assignments.
So we adjourn the regular meeting.
Right.
Right.
And then the three of you can come up to the dais and participate in the organization and assignment discussion.
Okay.
That sounds good. And then we'll be able to swear in for sure on the 28th. Hi.
Okay.
So,
Technically, Ely is not out yet, huh?
right.
For
That's right.
another hour?
No, because we can't swear him in tonight. So
We don't have finalized results.
The county doesn't have finalized results
County doesn't
until
want
next
us
week.
to because there's too many outstanding provisional ballots.
Really?
Yeah, you can't leave.
Well,
yes, we're
joking
serious.
with
but
it.
you
Yeah,
can
they're
leave if you
serious.
want afterwards, but technically you're not out, are you, until we swear in the new board? But so you're still.
Reading gray hairs pop.
You're scared him.
Are you saying that I should stay here tonight?
You don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's up to
But
you.
if you're, have loss pains, morning,
Morning, not in like in the morning,
and
but
delay the
morning,
meeting,
like a
your
morning
departure
dove.
one
games.
more week.
I mean, I can. That's fine.
No, it's not, there's not, there's
That we're
nothing
just
we're gonna
gonna,
do in the meeting.
yeah, they're just gonna.
You'll have to add an
Yeah.
extra chair then
Yeah.
when they come up.
Yeah,
They're gonna come up but not be sworn in.
yeah. So they're elect, yes, trustee elect, says same vote. Okay.
But the work session from 6 to 7, we've scheduled for discussion about the $10 million that's been set aside as part of the downtown Superior Town Center, whatever you want to call the development over there, for parks and civic space. There's an Exhibit B to the cost sharing agreement, which is included in the packet for your review. There's a specific section in that cost sharing agreement that talks about the $10 million and how it's spent. And Exhibit B tries to define the costs breakout between civic space, indoor space, and park space. These are estimated costs. It's always been, I think, at least my opinion, that those numbers could fluctuate between the two depending on how the board sees fit to spend those dollars. And Kendra, jump in if you've got anything to add to anything I'm saying. There was an option in there for the town for indoor space. The board decided to exercise that back in 2014, I believe. What we told the developer at that time was, we plan on having indoor space within the town center, but we didn't commit to a specific square footage. We just said up to 40,000 square feet, because we're still going through the process of trying to define what we want in that space. And this new board will have to go through that exercise and see if we can finally get to a point where we know exactly what we would like to see in that indoor space and how big it'll be. The indoor space was always thought to be in the area of the Superior Plaza, right off of Main Street. Block 6 was identified in the agreement, but that could change depending on what the developer comes forward with, whether it's a hotel or other uses. We may decide in agreement with them to move it to another location than Block 6, but right now that's what was identified. We provided to you, just so you would have it for discussion purposes, our estimated costs for the parks based on all the agreements. These are estimates, but we feel pretty comfortable that that's close to what we think they'll be. You never know once it goes out to bid, but we think we're pretty close. We also provided to you site plans for the 4 parks. Some are just concept, like for Park 3. The indoor civic space concept that Patrick, working with the company, was able to put together, and then the budget estimate. And then Kendra, anything to add?
Pat, I did have a clarification. I think it's just a mistake.
Yeah.
On page 2 of the memo, or cover memo, referring to Park 3, it says only 20% of the identified 10 million would be used to build this Park 3, and I think it's 20% of the cost of the park.
That's correct. Yep. Thank you. Yep. So with that, open it up for any questions on any of the information that was provided, or any discussion you'd like to have with regard to this topic.
So I have a question about, there was discussion at one of the board meetings where Bill Jenks was talking about the $50 million aggregate number that needed to be hit before they had an obligation to construct any parks. Reading section 16 of the cost sharing agreement, so halfway down, there's language that says if SORA, as directed by the town, elects to require that the developer construct civic space within Block 6 of the project, SORA must so notify the developer no later than September 1st, 2014. The letter that you sent, Matt, is dated September 26, 2014.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the developer taking the position that that option was not timely exercised?
No, it was discussed at the meeting. The developer was at the meeting where the board decided to trigger that obligation, and it was discussed with him, the representative at the time, not acknowledging that it was past that deadline, and they acknowledged that that was fine.
Okay, so what is the basis then for this $50 million number needing to be hit before there's an obligation for
There's
this?
none.
Okay, but that's just their
Because-
position.
And if you
It
have-
was, but
it
after
was.
reading it,
And
after
after
Bill
you
Jenks
had
read it, then he goes, oh, I understand. It's no
Okay.
longer, he just was not up to date with, he
Okay.
had never read the document.
Yeah,
So it was
Yeah.
an erroneous position that they were taking at that point, that they thought that they didn't have an obligation to do so until the $50 million was hit.
Correct,
Yes.
correct.
Which they have now moved off of
Acknowledged
that
it.
position.
Right.
Okay.
Right, right.
I had not, there's a lot of documentation prior to Bill Jinks coming into the development, and some of that documentation he hadn't received or hadn't seen, and I forwarded that letter to him after we had the discussion, so he has it now.
Okay. good.
The other thing, not to relieve him, Bill Jenks, of any error, you know, but he had 6 attorneys, I think, since he's come on board, you know, through his investment group. And so he hasn't been getting really up to date or current. He's had to deal with 6 different attorneys.
Right.
So he's not really always on top of things because he's got bad counsel that's been, I mean,
Often different.
often different.
There's
I don't
no-
know, I can't be relative as to whether
Th-
they're
this-
bad or
Yeah,
not.
This
there's no-
agreement
there's no institutional
preceded
memory.
his time at
Right,
Ranch Capital.
right,
Correct.
yeah, very much so.
What are you, a lawyer?
I love it, I love it. So the reason that I wanted to have this discussion about the 10 million, it's not about whether or not it's in the agreement, the cost sharing agreement. It's how do we as a board expect to spend that $10 million? And what were our expectations in the past, and now what are our expectations going forward? You know, and particularly when we heard for the first time in the meeting that the original amount for Central Park, Village Green, which is Park 4, we agreed in the SIA, subdivision improvement agreement, that the park would cost $431,888. And now Bill said the other night, first time we ever heard this, a couple meetings ago, it was gonna cost $609,000.
There's inflation, there's inflation attached to each one of the parks, and are we committed to that?
Well, that's why we're having this discussion now. Do we?
What are we committed to? The inflation, or are we committed to the amount that we agreed to pay for the park?
That's why we're having this
inflation
discussion. That's exactly the question. Are we going to hold the developer to the $10 million and to the amounts that we approved in the FDP as we approved it, or are we going to allow it through inflation to keep eating into our 10 million after 2 years after, 3 years after we approve the FDP? The developer will get their money back through the TIF, the additional inflation costs. The question is, we have a finite $10 million that doesn't expand as a result of inflation.
It's not 10 million anymore, now it's 9.5 or what, I mean, it's actually worth less than 10.
Well, it's 9
Why? Because
after
we-
Central Park and Village.
Yeah, forget that, just the cost of, just the future cost of money, present value
That's right.
of this has fallen.
Yeah, yeah, so, well, then that's another question. Do we have $10 million to spend as the town directs? And already we've had it split in the cost-sharing agreement of October of 3 years ago to be $4 million for parks, and only for parks, and $6 million for whatever the town directs. So now, we've carved out 4 million, and the developer gets to spend that 4 million, because we don't spend it, the developer will spend it for parks that have not yet been completed. Hold it in reserve to spend for parks not yet completed. So that leaves us with $6 million to spend as we direct. So now that's the question, I think, before us. How are we gonna direct that expended? How do we want that $6 million spent?
Equally, the discussion is and ever, was it ever, deemed that 10 million was the full cost of the parks and civic space?
No,
And,
and that's
how
clear,
much
no,
over-
right? Yeah.
How much over that are we comfortable working with? Because, let's say, for argument's sake, reality tells us, it's 5.5 million for, right now we're at 6.4 million just for these parks if they were constructed today,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that leaves 3.7.
If they're,
For
no,
ci-
if they're constructed today, it'd be 5.8.
Yes,
So that's
you're right.
parks
Yeah,
1
yeah,
and 2,
yeah.
but
You're
she's
right.
counting in the
One,
civic
No, no.
central.
Park Village Green.
No, he's
Yeah, that
right.
would be the 6
He's right.
million.
No.
All of them.
5.8.
So round it up to 6. Right now, the 3 parks constructed, as soon as you can get to them, is right around $6
Okay.
million.
Mhm.
That only leaves 4 million for civic space, and I really appreciate this exercise, that's only gonna buy us about 12,000 square feet.
Mhm.
I don't think that's adequate. Does anybody else think it's adequate?
And is that only for
Especially-
construction and not for finishing out the inside of the building?
So Paul, does the 300 per square foot include finishing? Yes. I'm
Okay,
getting
so
a
it'd be-
confirmation from the finance director.
Okay, that's a great nod, I like
But
that.
is it a foregone conclusion that this $10 million is $10 million in whatever times $10 million, whether it's today, tomorrow, 2 years in the future, or is there an argument that it should be earmarked for inflation? If you look at Exhibit B, the probable cost summary, it specifically says uninflated. If Exhibit B is a part of the cost sharing agreement, why?
I hope you're correct, but that's,
That's correct.
okay, but you said there's no inflation adjustment at the last meeting.
No, no.
Well, it says $10 million under Section 16.
Right.
Here it says the probable cost summary. They could have just said nothing. They could have said probable cost summary and $10 million, right?
Right.
But they specifically said uninflated, which to me suggests that somebody was thinking about inflation and that this is back in 2013. This is $10 million of uninflated dollars. Obviously, there's at least an argument, a good faith argument, that whether this is going to be built in 2013, 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020, that inflation is going to have some effect on those dollars. And the fact that the parties were at least
I hope you're correct.
earmarking, I'm not saying that I am correct, but
Bill
I'm saying that
Jenks
there may
was
be
at
an
that-
argument here that
that-
it should be correct.
Yeah, Bill Jenks was at that meeting, and when it was said that there is no inflation adjustment.
I think there's an ambiguity here.
There's definitely an ambiguity.
There's
Yeah,
definitely
I
ambiguity.
agree.
I think that the issue
whole
is that
thing is-
the inflationary language is pretty typical because what we're usually focusing on with that exhibit is the amount of the letter of credit that has to be posted. And so the point is to make sure that we get a sufficient letter of credit as costs increase. And I understand that there's certainly, there's some ambiguity. I think the issue is that Section 16 says 10 million and doesn't say a word about it. I hear what you're saying, but it talks about Exhibit B, and Exhibit B over and over again says it's estimates only, and that, yes, there's words in there about inflation. There may be an ambiguity. I think what Trustee Giselle and I were talking about before is that even if so, there's an argument too that this comes out of the TIF regardless. So it really, I don't know that it's gonna matter all that much to the developer, because they're gonna get reimbursed out of the TIF anyway. So these are all going to be public improvements, no matter what they are.
Right.
But if a document is 2013 and this doesn't get built till 2020, in those 7 years, that 10 million is not even close.
It's not
Sure.
worth it.
Right.
Well, and it's the same for all the other public improvements. There's public improvements identified in the Exhibit B that are gonna be built 10 years from now that aren't parks. It could be a parking garage, and
Right.
those are gonna be inflated over what's in Exhibit B.
Mhm.
I guess my thinking is that if we're looking at a dollar amount, and we're saying that this is going to be the threshold from which we make certain decisions, we need to first figure out whether that's actually that threshold or not. And
Well, let's work at it backwards. The 109 is 109. And
Yes.
no more,
Yes.
not one
Exactly.
penny more for
Right.
25 years.
Right.
It's
Right.
109. And if
Right.
they wait to build the parking garages and they cost
Exactly.
100 million by
Right.
25 years.
That's on them.
That's on them.
Right, so 109 is not growing.
The sum of the parts has to equal the whole.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, in some ways,
Right.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter, because it does, but it-
Right.
the longer they take, the less amount of time they have left on the tip clock as well, and so they wanna take all the time in the
But-
world.
Okay, let's build on this argument. Can we force them to build them now, again, as little inflation factor as possible, or to recognize inflation if they build them later? I mean, do we have any ground to stand on about saying we want them now?
No,
Why not?
because that's not what the agreement says, we shall negotiate the schedule.
Right, and the financing agreement used to say, public finance agreement, which is no more, it's been replaced by the cost-sharing agreement, said they would be built, the parks would be built at the same time the FDP, the
That
block
was-
adjacent to it was being FDP.
I thought that was
But
still in
that's,
there.
No.
that's no longer in the cost-sharing agreement. It was in the public finance agreement, which is now void, or replaced, superseded by the cost-sharing agreement. So we don't even have that lever anymore to push or pull, that before they had to build the parks at the same time they were building the blocks adjacent to them. So that's why they brought Village Green in right away, because they were doing that FDP that went around it, the streets that went around it. But now, so I had a bigger question about the 10 million, which, because we have the first time we saw the 10 million was in the development agreement, which is still in effect.
Right,
And the development agreement from March of 2013, March 11, 2013, has the $10 million here as as town hall. It was listed as town hall, $10 million to build town hall. So then that got changed to civic, actually handwritten in here, got changed to civic. And so all these costs, and they all added up to $198 million, I think. So out of this estimated cost then came back, and we got back to the Exhibit B in the cost sharing agreement. And you'll note that the 10 million is very specifically identified last. The 10 million originally was intended not to come out of TIF, not out of the 109. It's part of the 145 million, but that's listed here, the 144 million, whatever plus. But it's not, it was never intended to be out of the $109 million. Now, the 10 million was originally basically a gift from the developer to get this ability to come in and develop this and get 100% of the incremental property taxes from the town, agreed to by the town, to give them back that revenue. So now I'm sitting here going, okay, where is the 10 million? We're assuming that they can get it out of TIF. And I guess they can, or they can tax for it through the metro districts. Would that be correct, Kendra?
sure.
So they're gonna get their money back anyway, but we're sitting here with a $10 million, right now it's finite. I mean, it's only that much. And we need to know what we're going to say to, what we're gonna expect of the developer, of how we're going to spend that $10 million. 4 million we know has to go to parks, because they can buy the contract, the
Would
cost
you
sharing. It says that
read
they
that
can.
part in there so that our trustees-elect can hear that language?
About the holding back the 4 million,
Yeah,
if they
that-
haven't been
yeah,
built?
if they haven't been built, the
Yeah, well, you
developer
probably
may
got
hold
that
back
right.
the 4 million.
Yeah, it's in the cost sharing agreement.
Section 10.
Yeah, it says that if the parks have not been completed, they can hold,
They can withhold 4 million.
they can hold
Up
back
to.
up to $4 million.
It's in section 16, I believe.
Okay.
If as of the date of SER's request for funding, all of the public park improvements as
Right.
set forth in line item 15
Right.
of Exhibit B, which
Right.
is
that's the 4 million.
have not been constructed, a portion of the civic space obligation, which is 10 million, equal to the estimated cost of completion of the remaining public park improvements may be retained by the developer.
So we're committed to spending 4 million, and that leaves us with 6 million. And what we need to have this discussion is, how do we expect to spend that $6 million?
Well, there's a question, do we need to figure out how to spend all that, or is the assumption that we're gonna be spending more of it?
Yeah, I
always-
wouldn't frame the question the
Right.
way that you just framed it.
Well, if we go forward with these parks the way they've been devised right now and presented to us, we'll basically spend the majority of the $10 million on
Right.
parks.
Right,
And
which we
I,
can.
that's what I'm saying, I don't think we should allow that, or allow that expectation to become reality.
Okay.
We should not expect to be using the majority of our $10 million for parks. The developer needs to put
I
up
think
some of their
that's what
money.
we should be
Yeah,
discussing.
and-
What's our max we're willing to spend on parks?
Right,
And what residual then goes to other civic space? And then thirdly, how do you augment that to creating any meaningful
right.
civic
Right.
space?
That's where I'm
That's
at.
how I see
Is that
the
4 or
discussion.
6?
The 4 is already there, we gotta spend that on parks.
So
Unless
is
we
that
can
the
talk
number?
them out
Is
of it.
that the number?
That's where.
We
I
could
think-
force it,
part
but
of the-
I don't think it's in our best interest to force it.
And part of the other issue here is we still don't know what we want as far as indoor space.
That's right.
Right,
But we do know what we want in parks, so that's the starting point. I mean, we know, because we just built one. I mean, and we've got now Ms. Prostak here, and Mr. Prostak out there somewhere, and Mr. Prostak right here. We know what we've spent. So we know that a park of the caliber of the one at El Dorado K8 is roughly $3 million, right? And to me, some of these amenities that really wowed us from the last matrix plan is of that caliber. You know, so in my mind, I'm actually throwing $3 million out there, and I guess we're not being contradicted here. At current value, Parks 1 and 2 at $5 million is $2.5 million each, and
What's the
that's
size
sort of
the
close to
parks?
3.
One and two, what's the total size?
Agree?
That's a good question. I don't know. Patrick, do you know size?
16 total, 17 total.
Acres?
16
With
total.
floodplain? That's with the
Between 1
floodplain.
and 2.
What did you
Yeah,
say?
15.
And then what's the size of the Aldo parks?
11.
11, and then Tom's.
9-ish.
So I mean, that's another way to look at it, is we'll go total square foot.
It was 200 acres, what we ended up with in Oda.
But the El Dorado includes excavation, whereas some of that is covered with
El
parts
Dorado.
1 and 2.
Correct, yep.
Included a lot of grading.
Yeah,
A-
so I was saying that
large
$3 million
component.
is like an all-in, but you're talking
Minus.
about in town center having some of the excavation and everything covered outside of the 10 million.
In line 10 of the Exhibit B, there's 6 million, 6.2 for excavation.
Right.
So, and that, at first, you know, there was confusion amongst the developer even, but that clearly, and some of this now, naturalized air, open space planning area 3, we're taking that on now. Because we've accepted that buffer area as a town. So in there is naturalized open space planning area 3 for $1.2 million. So that money is now available, not for doing that, because we're gonna do, of course, I'm sure they've used up the majority of that to dig it out, put it back, and then do something. But technically, there's $1 million there out of that I can't read my 3 number, is it? Or $6.2 million. But we have, instead of, I don't know how anybody could have gotten this detailed on this Exhibit B to say it's gonna cost this much for each of these little pieces.
Well, we asked for that.
We have to have that for a letter of credit, that's.
Oh.
No,
But then not off of this, though. We don't have a letter of credit off of this.
Well, but
Cost sharing
that
agreement?
was sort of the form that we're used to seeing, which is a detailed cost estimate, which is how we formulate our need for a letter of credit.
That
And we're
was
using
sprung
that
on us
Format.
Friday night at 5 PM. I was furious. Watch that meeting. It had never appeared before, and it sprung on us, and that's why I reiterated 100 times that this is estimated, this is, may or may not ever be realized, you know, this is just working numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, after that
And
long,
it
long
changed
process.
significantly from the first exhibit of public improvements from March. They're quite a bit different than how they
And that was sprung on
documented
us
the
Friday
cost.
night.
Right. So, and I don't know how we come to some, but I think collectively we should be in the same, going down the same path as what we expect, how we expect the parks to be built in Superior Town Center. Do we expect to pay for them all out of our 10 million, or do we expect the developer to
Well, we know we're
fund?
not on Park 3, that he's paying 80% of that.
Yeah.
Possibly if he agrees to what we want. And
Okay.
if we're very compelled to have to agree with him, get him to agree.
Well, if we
because
don't
he'll
agree,
pay
then they pay
80%.
100%.
Okay?
If we don't agree, then the developer,
But likewise, if he doesn't agree, it has to come out of our 10 million. Otherwise, it's up and above the 10 million.
well,
That
see,
was
that's,
the whole
this is ambiguous too.
sordid negotiation.
Yeah, I think we're going about this the wrong way. I really think that we should look at a breakdown. I think Patrick's working on that, of what each component
Yeah.
of parts 1 and 2 are costing. And then let's look at like we did with the other parks. Take every component and say, we like this, but we don't want to spend that much money. And let's
I would, how did we get the subtotal here for parks 1 and 2 if we did not do that?
Yeah.
I thought that's
Well,
what we arrived
Matrix
at.
helped put that together.
Right,
Yeah.
well, but it's based on features.
I would like to propose another option, which is, we say we have $4 million, but here's the park we want, and now you have to cough up the difference, the developer, and then have that discussion about that. Because we have $4 million to spend on parks, and we only have 4 parks. Park 1, 2, partial 3, and we already know what Park 4 is. That's it.
So
Those are
you're
the only
asking
parks.
if parts 1 and 2 cost 5 million total,
They have to throw.
well,
the
actually,
money.
including parts 3 and 4, then.
They come
we're
up with the
spending
difference.
They come up with $1 million.
Right.
I don't think they'll do that, but it would be nice if they did, because I think that would also encourage them to build sooner.
Right. And
I think they
we-
just might, because the whole reason for that minimum $4 million commitment to parks, they drove because they said they're so integral to the success of the development.
Right.
So we say, okay, 4 is it, no more. And if you guys want these Cadillac parks there,
Mhm.
then you guys have to figure out how to come up with
But
the
then you're
next
saying
one.
that the other 6 million is going to go towards indoor space?
Civic space.
Civic space being,
Right.
well, that now define civic space then on the 6 million, what would it be?
Well, Kendra's defined in various
Right.
ways in here already.
But if you're saying all we're gonna spend is 4 million on parks,
Right.
then the rest is gonna be some kind of
Right.
indoor space.
Yeah, which isn't
But
hard to
what-
spend.
What if we decide that really, we only need 15,000 square feet, and we only need to spend another $4 million, and we have $2 million left over?
Well, then I guess I can't imagine we won't spend the full $6 million.
No, I
I can't
agree with
imagine.
that, but I think that we should really
Well,
not
but-
worry about how we're gonna spend money 5 years from now. And let's look at the parks that we have that are possible of happening, and let's whittle them down to what we really want and what we're willing to spend on.
Right.
And if it happens to be 4.5 million, so be it. Then let's allocate 4.5 million of the 10 million to that, and then let's figure out the rest later.
But I think we should go back to the developer and say, this is good for you, good for us, and we're over by $500,000 or $1 million, you're gonna suck that up. And not suck it up, because they get that paid back to them through TIF. They'll get it back.
Besides, it's in their best interest to do it.
Well, and also they get 6.5% interest on that money that they advance for those public improvements. They're gonna be paid back the $1 million, the overage plus 6.5% interest. And that's in the agreements as well.
They only get that back in TIF if they, at the end of the project, they only spend up to 109 million, correct? I mean, if they spend 109 million, there's still another 2 million to be spent on parks, they're not gonna cough up 2 million and get.
Well,
They're never gonna make it to the
cap,
109
there's a
million.
total cap of 145 million.
145
The
million.
town's portion's
They get
109.
209.
The metro district could come up with the rest.
They could tax the 50 mils, up to 50 mils to come up with anything they wanted.
Okay, great, we can approach them with that, but that should not
Well, what's in our best interest? I mean,
Yeah.
is it in our best interest equally to have, gorgeous parks there?
Of course.
Is it in our best interest? Or is it in our best interest to say, oh, medium quality parks are okay, and
You've seen the parks
Yeah.
we install.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we've set that
Right.
expectation.
but we do have some medium quality, and we've got some high quality.
But
I mean, this is the type of yin and yang you've got to go for.
Right.
The one by your house, is it high quality?
It's
Oh,
stellar.
All right then, that's your answer.
And we got it in for 2.8
It'll be
plus,
closer to 3.
3 instead of 4.
I think the other thing for us to keep in mind as a town
With
is-
all the grading in, with all the
We've-
grading here, we're up to a
Right.
million more.
Right. I think what we should keep in mind is, as a town, we've already committed to take some of the costs off of this Exhibit B. We're doing Coal Creek Corridor on our dime out of Open Space Fund. They don't have to put a penny into that, which they would have had to have done if we wouldn't have sucked that up. And we've just took $1
I
million.
don't think there was ever the expectation
Yeah,
to
they
do Coal
said
Creek.
no.
They would
Yeah.
do some landscaping up to it, but they weren't gonna do the
Right, yeah,
changes to the,
right.
like the 3-foot drops and stuff
channel
like that,
drops,
stuff,
right,
right?
yeah.
But they would have had to spend some money on
That
it. Now, we're
transition.
gonna be spending that
Yeah, yeah.
1.7 million or whatever. And so they would have probably spent $500,000 probably to get it up to, clean it up and all that kind of stuff. And we're taking $1.2 million off of their list here because we sucked up the naturalized open space along the southern edge, the buffer.
Track the age, yeah.
Yeah, tract H. So we've already assumed $2.5 million or more, $3 million worth of costs that are gonna come out of our open space fund for parks that normally should have been and are part of the landscaping exhibits in the PD plan amendments 1, 2, and 3.
And will add tremendous value.
So that's why I think we should, as a body, feel comfortable with going to them and saying, here's the parks we want on 1 and 2. And we have $4 million to spend. When it's gone, then we expect the rest of that to come out of your funds that will be paid back to you in TIF. And I think that's a reasonable
But
request.
Kendra, we can't force them, right?
No, I
This
didn't
is
say we
negotiation,
expect,
right?
yeah.
Right, yeah, that's what I said, I mean, the construction schedule is what I'm talking about, we can't force.
So-
So we don't have 4 million though, I mean, you said 4 million towards parks 1 and 2, there's still another almost 9,000 for parks 3 and 4.
Well, parks 1, 2, 3, and 4, all the parks.
So you're saying go to them.
4 million
you want all
total.
4 parks.
It's Village Green. It's
For
a
our
substance.
contribution for it.
So one of the points that Rita made was these estimates that we have here for Parks 1 and 2 at 4.9 and inflated to 5.4. Those numbers came, I guess, in part from Matrix or entirely from Matrix?
Well, Central Park Village Green came from the developer.
Right, but the Parks 1 and 2.
Right.
Right. Does this number include improvements to the Coal Creek corridor?
No.
It's separate.
And does this number include grading?
No.
No.
Okay.
So I think having this discussion and asking them, hey, just chip in another million because versus here's why you should be chipping in more because of the grading, because of the Coal Creek work. I think that's a much more compelling
Well, the
discussion
grading is
to
their
have.
commitment already, and that's already elsewhere in the TIF.
Right.
So that's accommodated. So that's not part of our argument, because it is our consideration that if you want to do apples to apples with Aldo, the school parcel, and that's 3 million, then you look at the cost of parks 1 and 2, plus the cost of the grading,
Right,
right?
right.
And roughly divide by 2, I suppose, to get equal, right? So that's just the apples and apples, right?
Right.
But, what
But
is
the Coal Creek corridor clearly comes
is
out.
this?
It is
And how
not
much is
being.
that estimated at?
What's that?
Coal Creek corridor?
Oh,
1.5.
1.5.
Okay.
Now, we have commitment from urban drainage to, they're gonna contribute up to $400,000 towards those improvements. So
Towards the 1.5?
So we have $1 million probably.
And how much is our total out of pocket going to be all in on the restoration of the buffer and the landscaping, every penny that we would have thrown towards that?
We don't have those cost estimates yet.
but
We're
roughly,
working
is
on
it
it.
$1 million?
I mean,
That is
irrigation,
relevant.
yeah,
That's
it's
to-
gonna be
you know.
probably,
That's what they had put in here is 1.2 million.
So,
In their
so if we
estimate.
say 4 for parks, and understand that we've already spent this, I mean, we're committed to $1.5 million on Coal Creek Corridor,
Mhm.
and we're at 1.2 on the restoration of the buffer. These all add value to their property, right?
Mhm.
And I can buy, want to sleep on a little bit, but I can buy throwing the 4 million, saying this is it. Now, if you guys want to make these better than 4 million does, you're gonna have to wake up and you're gonna have to see where you can find it. And they've got up to 145, so
I
they
think
can
bringing
certainly do
those
that.
other pieces
Yeah.
into it makes, I think bringing those other pieces into it makes more
Educates
sense
them.
than just saying, do it because
Sure.
we want you to.
Oh, yeah, well.
Yeah, that's
I
why
think
we're
that's
here
why
having this
Rita
discussion.
wove the whole thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, again, if they put money in, if they advance funds to the development, they'll get them back at the cost of the actual dollars that they invested plus, I believe it's 6.5%. They actually get to pull back out of TIF their cost or their.
Is this their handling cost? What is it
That's,
you're
project
referring to
management
it-
is another 6% for the.
And what's the interest cost, though?
Because they're advancing the money, because they're not getting it from a bond. If they haven't let a bond issue yet, then the finance, the
I thought the
developer.
whole problem here and
Well-
the slowness in the development is they don't have that financial heft to advance a darn thing that
They
they're
got a
always
lot of
waiting.
help, they
Well-
just don't wanna use it.
they wanna use bond money.
They don't wanna use their money.
Yeah.
Anybody that's a good business person, somebody just got elected to some big office because he's a good, or no. Anybody who's
It
a
does
good
feel-
business person knows how to use other people's money, not their own.
Right.
And so that's what they're doing. I don't fault them for that. I'm just saying that they don't have to just
Well,
give
the
this up.
expense
They
of
also,
time, though.
part of the agreement says they can pull back out of, they can pull back out 6.5%, I believe it is, percent, or some percent on the money that they advance to the project.
Well, you know, Joe Cirelli said at the last meeting that, and I agree with his statement, we never expected 10 million to be the be-all and end-all of this. We knew it would
Right.
not, it wouldn't do it all, right?
Right.
And so I'm comfortable with it not doing it all. I'm comfortable with, I like Rita's argument, and this is all on tape. I like Rita's argument, and I think that's a great starting point.
And if we remember, the 10 million originally, back in March of 2013, was for a new town hall, not for parks. It got added on to, I could use a
It got
different word,
reinterpreted.
reinterpreted. Yeah, I could use it was bastardized to actually
word.
put more stuff into it than originally was planned. And as, you know, you see right here, it says, clearly it says, town hall, you know.
We
It
decided
was-
also, though, to be fair, that we didn't want town hall over there.
Yeah, that's when it became
Even
being
civic
norm.
space, it went from
Yeah.
town hall to civic space to parks.
Right.
Included with the civic space.
Yeah, but it evolved from the 10 million was for a building
Right.
space, civic space, and community civic space. And then in the last agreement, then all of a sudden it was defined as also including parks or certain fields. So and then it got split to 4 and 6. So I think.
Part of this discussion was also, pumped, I think, by the POSTAC meeting in which POSTAC asked for clarification on all this before they started some
Right.
trimming exercise. And I do still feel like it's premature for a trimming exercise right now. I mean, trying to figure out what
It's
we would get
premature.
rid of.
I don't, not at all.
I think it's
that we- I
premature.
think we saw one bid on the whole project, Parks 1 and 2. We didn't go back and say, is this the best you could do? And I think that that's the next step.
Well,
We gotta-
if you'll.
Well, that wasn't even a bid,
It's not a
that
bid,
was
it's an
just the,
estimate.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And-
the
Design.
consultant's estimate,
It's
yeah.
even better, I think.
What
we can
I-
get it down lower.
What I said at the end of the meeting was that, hey, we would never have had to trim off the 4 million estimate for school parcel, had we gone to construction bid, it probably would have come in right around 3 million anyway, just based on the fact when we bid 3 million, it came in at like 2.2, right? So if you use that same factor, we could have saved ProStack the exercise of trimming, we could have saved ourselves the headache, and we could have still had that. I love the park now, but it lost that level of inspiration that plan had. I mean, that was a super, super cool plan and integrated the school great with the park and all that kind of stuff. And that's an integration we're still gonna have to work on because we, whatever. So I vowed at the time when that 2.2 came in to say, never again am I gonna cut the defining features out of a project before we actually have construction costs and know we need to, right? That's why I'm using the word premature. We might be able to do an exercise of prioritization, but not cutting, because possibly we can get it all.
But what if you, so if you see the estimated cost of $3 million, then you're saying go to the contractors and tell them to bid on it?
Yes.
Because then we're kind of saying, yeah, we like this.
Well,
bid on it.
what was told to ProStack is that costs money. To do construction bids, I mean, isn't that about $100,000, $150,000 or something like that? So that involves a financial commitment by the board that, in this exercise, that, well, before we start really cutting, why don't we see if we need to cut? And we have to pay somebody for the time and effort to put those numbers together to see if we do
But isn't
need
that
to
what the
cut.
estimate is for?
Huh?
That's what you do an estimate
No,
for.
an estimate is, it's, trust me, I just had a major house project done, huge house project. And they do this plus equals. And then I send it back to them and say, okay, there's gotta be some synergy and economies of scale here. Take it back and give me that number, right? Because
That's right.
you don't have to whatever, so.
Well, that's what I'm saying we're
Yeah.
doing for this park here.
Huh?
Is we have an estimate, let's send it back and say, wait a minute, let's see what we can cut down on this.
I'm not saying cut down,
Yeah.
I'm saying have it
On
all
cost,
in.
on cut down
Have
on
it,
cost, that's right.
yeah, have it all in, but just have the efficiencies of one deployment of all the equipment and whatnot, one time out there. It's what we did so well at school parcel. Had we done it over 3 years as we had thought we might have to, the cost would have been way up there because you had 3 deployments, you had the dollar, the time value of money, you have the inefficiencies of product purchases, et cetera, so.
Well,
I'm-
where I'm, okay.
Well, I know the board decided, to separate out the Coal Creek corridor and not consider Parks 1 and 2. We saw the presentation from Matrix at Planning Commission, which the board elected not to actually see that entire presentation. And to what Sandy's saying about cutting and losing sight of the vision, I mean, that presentation that Matrix put together was absolutely spectacular.
They're pretty amazing.
The vision that they have for Parks 1 and 2, I mean, my boys were enjoying
Right.
the Eldorado to-be-named park this weekend. It's spectacular, but these parks are gonna be something special. If we
They're gonna be defining for the town
allow
center,
the
that's,
vision, to really guide their construction. And I agree that I don't think we should just arbitrarily cut things just to say we're gonna fit it within a particular number, because we might shortchange ourselves as a
And I
result
kind
of
of
that.
see Eldorado Park as a neighborhood park in essence, right?
I think it's a community park.
It is, but the reality is, people that live closer to it are gonna use it more. I
Yeah.
think these two are like the whole town.
Right,
So I don't see them in the same category that way.
Well,
Right.
to that end, I don't know that I want to totally shut the door on anything above 4 million if they decide. no,
but is it a
that's-
starting
that's-
point?
that's
Rita
the
didn't say
number.
shut the door, she said starting point.
I just want to throw that out.
Yeah.
Because it should be a defining park.
Yeah,
And what Matrix proposed would be absolutely defined.
right. Well, what, the sea change that occurred there, Mark, was it really took a couple of years to get respect for the Coal Creek corridor. This is something that OSAC kept dogging, and it was not gonna happen under that original design. That's why when that design, I thought, well, we've already spent all this money on design, why are we now going to spend more money on the design? That's why I objected to that for a couple of meetings. But when you throw in the carrot of now incorporating and respecting the Coal Creek corridor and making that a real centerpiece, I'm in, because we only can do that one time. If we don't incorporate it beautifully, et cetera, we've lost this gem. And to me, so that's the real power of this matrix thing, is now the Coal Creek corridor is part and parcel of that big vision. And I think we all were wowed by that.
Well, to me, it is that we go back and have the discussion with the developer, because we're taking on expenses that were originally included in here. And so if we're saying it's 5.3, is that the number of the 4 parks?
5.9 almost, 5.855.
Today's cost?
Yep.
No, inflated.
No,
Wait.
5.8.
Today?
Today.
Okay, 5.8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
we're
Yeah.
saying 4 million, plus we're picking up like $1.5 million in costs that would have been in your.
That are
numbers.
benefiting it.
That are that it won't even have to come out of TIF, they can use that money somewhere else. You know, I mean, can use that money someplace else. And so I think that 4 million plus $1.5 million or whatever, we're at the 5.8. So I'm saying that let's go forward with let's continue to work toward the vision, the matrix concept of Parks 1 and 2, and go back to the developer and say, this is really in all of our best interests. And we're we'll cough up $4 million out of our portion of the 10 million. And then we're covering these other costs that would have had to be covered by
In
you.
real money right now.
In real money. And you cover the rest of this in TIF. You'll get it back through TIF plus interest. But that's what we need to go and present. We want that $4 million park for Parks 1 and 2 built. And then Central Park, could potentially be 20% of.
And not in 5 years.
No, not in 5 years. That's where they have the ability to advance the money to these public improvement projects and get real interest back on that money back through TIF. Now, I'm not in their finance department, I'm not their director of finance, whether or not they have the money available right now or when they'll have it available, but for God's sakes, I think they could figure out how to come up with $1 million or $2 million in the next 12 months. I would think that they could. I think Paul would be able to come up with $1 million out of a big investment fund.
All comes up with all kinds of.
I know it. So this is what I think we all need to be in. I wanted to see us all in the same place, that we want to go and say, these are the parks we want. It's good for us, it's good for you, it's a win-win. We're paying the difference in another area that you would have had to pay. So here's your $4 million, you pay the difference and get these.
What I
4
heard new
parks.
that I do like is here's your $4 million for Parks 1 and 2.
Well, we've already committed to do Village Green at $433,000.
We don't care if that's built in 2025.
Village Green, we've already committed, we've done an FDP.
So what?
Park 4.
We almost did an FDP on Parks 1 and 2. It's meaningless.
I know.
We may have to change the FDP, but
Well-
what we want to do is show our priority.
We-
Parks 1 and 2, $4
Well,
million.
then how?
That's what
how-
you said, that's what I liked about it.
Okay, well,
Maybe-
it's kind of
I mean, maybe-
$1.5 billion of the other.
Sure.
Because wherever they
But
want
it
to
may
apply their
affect
money,
timing.
it's kind of
If
like.
we say Parks 1 and 2 are
Yeah.
priorities, put the $4 million to that now, because we're gonna be benefited if Parks 1 and 2 go in sooner rather than later.
And then you're saying, let
And
them come up with the money out of their
figure it out.
bonding, which is.
And
what
if
they'll be able to
if
do.
they feel, you gotta
Well, they
make
don't
them
have
have a
to know
need
anything.
they wanna meet. If they feel Village Green and Central Park are so important, then they'll prioritize that internally.
Okay, I hear, that's good.
So you're saying that I'm sorry, the cost for Central Park and Village Green, that's the portion that would be on them?
Right. Well, we say 4 million, Parks 1 and 2, and we don't have to answer every question here. Whatever happens to that, they're gonna have to drive, whether or not that's a priority for them. But Peter, we have you here, and Sandy, what do you think? Based on pro-stacks.
Well, I think you've answered half the question. There's still the question of the civic space, indoor civic space.
Right.
And so, do you, you know, when do you really want to start digging into that? Because right now, you're saying $6 million. If you're saying $4 million is the parks, $6 million is potentially indoor space. You're working with $300 per square foot. You're only talking 20,000 at most square feet.
Right.
That's half of the design proposal that you saw, the design concept that you saw back in April.
But I'm not saying only that.
Well,
I'm
that's-
saying
that's the
6
question.
million
But
towards
that's
the
what
total
I'm
budget.
saying.
6 plus whatever.
It's
Yeah.
not
6
the
plus.
40,000
You still are,
square feet.
and you're answering the park question essentially, but you're not necessarily saying, are you capping the civic space at 6 million, or are you
No.
gonna answer
I'm not
the question
intending
of
to cap it.
what is the board comfortable with going beyond the $10 million to get the
See
civic
that?
space?
You brought it in there.
And we
Kevin.
can't make that decision until we get a better handle on what kind of space we might want to float past everyone.
It's 'cause
And
I'm so sweet.
But we know, what we wanna do is put
I'm
a
all
stake in the
covered. I'm not
ground
really
that we're
worried.
gonna retain the 6 million to build some civic space to be determined. And it might be more, we might have to spend more money, but we don't know that until we've got some kind of a
But civic
concept.
space to be determined includes parks, additional parks, or more money spent on parks.
Possible.
Well,
You gotta be clear there, because civic space
No.
is defined as all encompassing.
Where the 10 million was defined as all encompassing and was split between 4 and 6.
Okay.
The reason I say maybe is because we may end up coming way off that civic space at some point in the future, at which point, if their parks have not yet been built, perhaps we
The
would.
likelihood is we're gonna
Yeah.
spend that 6 million.
But
So
I'm
if
not,
we come
I'm
up
not
with a-
capping it. I buy totally by Joe's thing. 10 million never was my expectation
That's right,
that we would
Right.
fully do anything.
It was an offer from the developer.
But we
of a
have to,
gift, kind of.
we have to, what I like about the conversation so far is we have to break it into nuggets, because otherwise we're paralyzed, right? So if we break it into nuggets and we figure just the park component and say the rest most likely will go towards indoor civic space, plus possibly more, depending on how that argument fleshes out, we've got a starting point here. So I'm pretty comfortable with this starting
So-
point.
So as next steps, is this something staff can begin having those conversations with them? Because this is not something that we negotiate with them
No,
over the
right,
dais. This is
right.
something that
Right.
gets,
Conversation.
has many conversations.
Yeah.
Over time. So is that
Can
agreement?
can I just ask one more question you might want to get clarification on? The indoor space, you're working with the $300 per square foot number. I believe that's everything, indoor and exterior and interior construction.
Right.
Did it ever get clarified from the developer of what you're actually responsible for? Are they covering the exterior and you only have to finish the interior, or?
No, we gotta
They're
get the
covering
building of
nothing.
the exterior.
They're covering
Ely and I
nothing.
are clear that it does not include that it does include the exterior,
We
but
pay
we were
for
in the
the exterior.
minority. Huh?
We
It's
pay
gonna
for
be, the space more
Steely and I
likely will
didn't
be part of
understand it
a larger building.
But that's my
Yeah.
point, so
Yeah.
are you actually responsible for, if it's gonna cost $300 a square foot, are you actually responsible, is the town responsible for the entire 300? Are they covering part of that by building a structure?
That's not how I understood it. Randy said specifically no, that we are,
Well,
if we're occupying
It needs
20,000
to be
square feet,
revisited.
we're responsible for paying for 20,000
The
square feet,
construction of
including
20.
the building,
Yeah, yeah.
interior,
That's
everything.
correct.
Okay, but I just wanted to bring
That
up
may not
because
be what
that's
you
potentially
thought,
could be
but
incorporated.
that's
no,
not what it said. It
because
said
we were
amenities.
occupying
I'm sorry,
floors
Finishes.
of
We'll own
a
those.
space.
Not amenities, but finishes,
We'll own that space.
right? So, but that is another reason why we can't specifically say, well, we're gonna spend the 6 million for, we don't even know what
Right.
we're building, you know,
Right.
what we're gonna be responsible for building or where.
But we
or-
can at least try to jumpstart these parks with this conversation.
Right. Because the way we were going a couple of meetings ago, we were gonna end up spending the majority
Right.
of the 10 million on parks.
No, we wouldn't let that happen. It would not have happened. And
And-
that's why we tabled it.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't, just on Parks 1 and 2, we couldn't imagine spending $5.5 million. So
Right.
that wouldn't have happened.
But when Bill Jenks stood up there and said, now Village Green is 600,000 and the Park 3
That's right.
is 2, so you start adding 5 million plus 600,000 plus a million something.
There's very little left for
We're,
civic.
right.
That's right.
Does
Yeah.
everybody now feel comfortable for having pulled that FDP and not having cemented this design? I think it was a very wise decision to not go any further with that.
Okay, so we got enough direction?
No, one last thing though. I like the negotiating back with them and saying we're willing to spend $4 million. But what about the design or the cost of the parks that we saw? I mean, we gotta go back to Matrix Design or whoever would build that and say, you gotta improve on these costs. So why don't we start working on that now? We're not gonna go back to the developer and say, well, go ahead and just build it as.
Patrick's been working with them a little bit already on
Yeah.
that, so he's gonna continue that work, so, yeah.
And then when it's appropriate, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was,
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I would just want to say, and then once we got more data about what we really like and don't like and the things that we might be able to move and stuff, then we need to consider it again as a board. Because like you said, at the planning commission, you've already considered it, loved it, and moved it forward. So,
And we loved it.
yeah, we love the concept.
I'm not saying that we cut the amenities of the park, I'm saying let's cut the costs on it. Let's go back to Matrix and let's see if they can reduce those costs. Like
It's
Sandy,
usually
like you said,
Matrix doesn't build it, though.
Positively correlated, cost and beautiful design.
But Sandy, you
Beautiful
just said
ideas.
that if you could go back to doing Eldo Park, you wouldn't have gone back and cut the
No.
original $3 million estimate, and you would have.
But you're saying Matrix, I'm not saying Matrix, because I view Matrix as this, whatever the
architect.
function.
You're right.
The construction costs now go to whoever's gonna execute
That's,
it.
we
Yeah.
don't know who's the
Yeah.
construction cost, but I'm
But,
assuming
okay,
Matrix would
that's
be
the
involved with that
conversation
somehow,
that
but I'd say
Patrick
cut the construction
sort of
costs.
was, easing in on, how, like, it's $150,000 or something to get the construction costs. And I do
Yeah.
think we should advance that, we should authorize that money as a board to get those construction costs. Is that what you're
So
saying?
we have to
what I'm
create an
saying.
RFP, is
Okay.
that why?
Yeah.
It costs
You
that
send
much?
it out to bid, yeah, and they have to
Create
be,
the documents.
they have to have documents that they would build off of.
I think that's very worthwhile.
Can I make one quick request? So in connection, and not necessarily directly in connection with these negotiations with the developer as to a commitment on Parks 1 and 2. But I think it would be really helpful for me personally, for Sandy, for Kevin, as the new trustees, to invite Randy and Bill here and whoever they want to have, and have a discussion about, just from a 50,000-foot perspective of what's the timeline looking like
Yeah.
to do the various parts of the project. I think that would be helpful for the entire board.
Sure, yeah.
Definitely helpful
Yeah, yeah.
for us. Just say, okay, we're going to be doing these parks, because I think right now, and this is something that concerns me, that they have different ideas as to when certain aspects of the development are going to happen than we do and that we want to have them do. And I think that
Well-
it will be helpful to get everybody on the same page, at least for nothing else, to understand where they're coming from.
And that was what precipitated all this, when I asked Bill Jenks, how are you gonna work Parks 1 and 2 into your project plan
Right.
timeline? And he said, we're not.
It's
We
like
don't know
50
when
million.
because we don't have to build it until we let 50 million, that's what started this. And it would only be Bill Jenks, Randy is not.
Yeah. It will only be Bill Jenks for other reasons too.
That's very good.
Good.
And that's part of it.
Well, that was a useful conversation.
Hey, could I borrow your cord? See, you have one in there? Let me get juice.
The wide one?
Oh, no, I need a little one. Do you have a little one?
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for November 14th, 2016. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you. Next on the agenda was swearing in of the new board members, but we're going to have to unfortunately delay that until the next meeting. If Town Manager, you want to go through those details?
There's two items on the agenda that'll have to be postponed to November 28th, unfortunately. That is swearing in of the new trustees and selection of a mayor pro tem. The county still has 4,000 provisional ballots that are outstanding, and while we don't think it's going to affect the results of the election, we need to wait until the county finishes their count, which will be next week, and then once that's done, we can swear in the new trustees on the 28th.
Okay,
So those are the two changes to the agenda.
okay, thank you. All right, let's have a roll call.
Mayor Clint Polson,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Chris Hansen,
Here.
Trustees Rita Dozell.
Here.
Sorry, Rita.
That's okay.
Sandy Pennington,
Here.
when I don't have Elia Gagor. So.
Emeritus. So
Manager Matt Magney,
Here?
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry,
Here.
Councilor Paul Sargent.
Okay, thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda, and the agenda was modified by taking out item number 7 and also the item number 16.
And then
And
one
the-
additional clarification, the items 14 and 15, which are town board organization issues and representative committees, we'll do those in a work session after the regular.
Okay. So we'll adjourn,
Yes. And just-
okay.
Yeah, just for the record, because they're just up for discussion purposes only and no formal action will be taken, we'll bring back whatever formal action you can bring that back at a later meeting. So that's why it can be done during a work session and
Okay.
not a meeting.
Okay, very good. So we'll adjourn the regular meeting after the consent agenda and go to a work session. Okay, very good. All right. Let's go into reports, questions, and issues.
Do we want to make a motion for approval
Oh,
of the
I'm sorry,
agenda?
yes,
Yeah,
I skipped
I'm-
right over that, yes. Would someone like to make a motion?
I
for
so
the agenda?
move based on the removals of the items
Okay,
at the
second.
end of the agenda.
Motion by trustee Dozell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Hansen. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start?
I guess I
Trustee
could start.
Gregoris.
So first of all, I just want to congratulate Kevin and Sandy and Mark. Delighted by the results personally, and I know collectively in talking to a lot of neighbors and friends. So I think the next board is going to be an outstanding board. Your experience and your passion and your that you bring and your wisdom, I'm just delighted. I think the next board is going to be awesome. So congratulations. Second thing is met with the youth advisory committee. So just to put it into perspective, so this was the treats for troops, the post-Halloween sugar high, and we actually broke it up in two days. So we collected on the first and then on the second. So last year we had 62 boxes. This year, 75 boxes. So clearly, it's working, and clearly the community is responding to it. Except the difference between last year and this year, last year we did in one night, and it was completely chaotic, and there was a mess everywhere. This year was so organized, and we had a lot more participation, and it was almost like an assembly line, but great teamwork, basically. So we were done. The kids had a lot of fun. So hopefully we will continue doing that for many years to come. It's something that really excites the kids a lot, and obviously it's a great cause. So. And the last thing I wanted to ask you, I saw on the digest, so there's been a delay for the roundabout? So can you explain that a little bit? And so I thought they were going to be done by Christmas. Obviously,
Right.
that's not going to happen.
No, the project will be, will go into January now, hopefully just the first couple weeks of January. But Comcast has a fiber optic line through that area, and they needed to do a directional bore for the conduit for that new line, and then to relocate that line, and then the switchover, which with fiber takes some time to do, the switchover. It's not an easy task to do, so that's what's caused the delay.
So I guess, the thought it was last year's traffic, the bridge, and, we're hoping there's always increased traffic around the holidays, so
Right, yeah.
do you feel comfortable that the way that it's configured right now, we'll be able to take care of that additional?
I think most of the issues we had last year were directly related at Marshall McCaslin intersection and on the interchange, which this is, I think.
It's not the same, I know.
Right, and we, with the 2 lanes in each direction on the bypass lanes, I think that helps. So I think we should be okay for the holiday season.
Okay, that's all I have.
And there was somebody here from Superior Maintenance, but we'll make sure that we stay on top of those lanes to keep them as dry as we can, considering the conditions, so.
I mean, in some ways, we've been very fortunate, all the construction. This has been the warmest, driest fall I can remember, like in my 21 years in Colorado. So in some ways, construction should be ahead of schedule, kind of, in some ways. Not just there, I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, on the turning into the sports stable coming down McCaslin, it's really hard to see, especially at night.
Yeah.
And
We're-
if there's a way you can either open it up or put a temporary sign there that says sports stable entrance here.
Yeah, where Alex is working on signage, so hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have that up to help visibility and direction for drivers.
Okay.
Yep.
Same congrats. Very excited about serving with you. I do think it's going to be a very vibrant board. I'm appreciative for all the hard work of running a campaign. Know it well, so welcome. On October 31st, attended the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council. We got a email from Joe Sorelli, the principal on that, the liaison. But I attended, and then Rita also came in and listened to that as well. I have to say I was very disappointed. What I had expected to see was a study on actinide migration. Actinide is all the radioactive elements, primary one of which is plutonium, and I expected to see impacts of 2013 flood, 2015 heavy wet season included in all this. Instead, all they did was that actinide migration study and all the things they knew at the time of the cleanup, which ended in 2005. So 11 years of science and 11 years of groundhogs and groundwater and floods and whatnot apparently is never going to be taken into account. So I'm just really disappointed about that. So I expressed that disappointment there. We'll see if it makes any difference. But we got the email, like I said, from Joe. He mentioned the CERCLA deadline next February. And Matt, I got your comments that you have made contact with Boulder County, which I think is our way. I think largely we can make a Boulder County statement with Boulder, us, and Boulder County in it. And to the extent one of us has a concern, the other doesn't, I think we can just footnote, we can say this is Superior's concern or this is City of Boulder's concern. But I absolutely think we've got to get that comment in because you only have once every 5 years to comment, and we cannot let the 5 years that incorporated 2013 flooding and 2015 anomalous event to go by without a comment. So really encourage us to get that done. On October 27th, I'm obviously not in date order here, the Cultural Arts Committee met to draft a resolution that this board will have, or the new board will have in front of it on November 28th. And it's a repurposed cultural arts group. It's got 3 prongs, cultural and fine arts, community gatherings, and public spaces in it. And so I'm excited to get feedback from the board on that. By the way, you're invited to the November 21st meeting. So a week from tonight is their next meeting. So anybody who has visions of how this town should look and feel from a placemaking perspective, you're welcome to attend that. I had my first Friday event on November 4th. A lot of these guys were there, and some of us guys, and some citizens there. And frankly, I didn't bring the notebook it was mostly election talk. Tomorrow night is a West Connect meeting from 4:30, West Connect event, PEL, Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, for the region at Rocky Mountain Airport. So it starts at 4:30. It's in the Mount Evans room, same room that Stewardship Council meets in. The West Connect ostensibly is to do all the rest of E470 to sort of make a full loop, but it's been repackaged to exclude the Jefferson Parkway at this point because Jefferson Parkway is so contentious. But I think we're kidding ourselves by not believing that that's part and parcel of a lot of people's minds. But for this meeting, we're talking about C470, US 6, and Colorado 93 corridors. I plan to attend. Rita, were you planning to go tomorrow night? And to just sort of see, we haven't been given the preliminary presentation, so I don't know what that's going to be like. But I encourage anybody who cares about transportation corridors to attend that. Soft Park opening for the school parcel was this weekend. It's phenomenal. Thank you to Jim. You were the ProStac chairman at that time, Jim Payne, Peter Bottomley, Sandy Hammerly, all the people who have worked on that hard for 6 years, staff, Martin, Patrick, we could go on. This is like the Academy Awards. Anyway, well done. The kids were nuts with enjoyment, absolutely crazy with enjoyment. I've already talked to a couple of you about the bike traffic problem. We've got a third of a mile or whatever course, nice concrete, and there was so much zooming and zipping and whatnot with bikes in and out that I asked somebody if we should contemplate making the interior of the park a bike-free zone if this keeps up, because it got dangerous. But maybe the excitement will wear off. But we do need plenty of bike carols because it was really great. The whole entrance off Torrey's Peak was congested with tipped over bikes that the kids had left there and gone in and played. So we need to have a way to keep those out of the, then a mom came through on her big bike and about drove over those. So I moved them. And teen engagement, teen group and residents in particular. It's just so insulting when you've put so much time and effort in this beautiful amenity and somebody lets their dog stuff right there without picking it up. And I'm going to cut them a bit of slack because we don't yet have the bags up, but not happy about it. So I picked it up for them. But, okay, Rock Creek Casino Night, bunch of us attended. That's always a great event. Read a sub for me at the November 9th OSAC meeting, and we'll be reporting on it.
Yep. Nothing to report, but I also want to congratulate and welcome the new trustees to the board and look forward to a very successful next 2 years. So congratulations.
Okay, and I too can't wait for you to sit up here with us, so that'll be next time. Can't wait. Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, I did attend that, and as a part of the public on October 31st. November 2nd, I went to a Dr. Cog work session, Denver Regional Council of Government. We talked mainly about urban growth boundaries in areas which are really no impact to us because we have no, annexation of capability or we're pretty much landlocked by open space or other towns and things. But it was quite a discussion about these people that have more space that they want to include in their UGA or UGB, I guess. It's called Urban Growth Boundaries in Area. So it was an interesting discussion, but no impact on Superior. Went to the first Friday, Sandy's first Friday, and there was additional talk about parks and trails, which I thought was very interesting discussion, and that helped frame some of our discussion that we had tonight, too. So I appreciate that from all the people that were there and talked about that. I did go to the November 9th OSAC meeting. We held it over the sports stable. That was interesting. Just getting up to the community space in there and all the people coming and going, and took, I was saying it was kind of dangerous to drive in that temporary road to get over to the sports stable at night. Everybody's going way too fast. Way too fast, and then you're kind of having to go off on the edge of because they're taking up the majority of that space. So it was just quite a trip just to get in there and park before we even got into the building. But there was a lengthy discussion again about the OSAC, and the committee wants to have the staff and the board understand that they would like to take a more active role in and be considered very seriously, to be asked to be given an opportunity to review and recommend on all types of initiatives or concept plans or financing agreements and things like that on open space. And so any open space considerations, they like to be able to given that for review ahead of time. And they're just asking to be allowed to do that because they feel that they weren't asked to contribute their recommendations or review on a couple of things that have happened recently. And there was a lot of puts and takes that happened with that. So one of them was like the buffer that we're going to be actually using open space funds to do that. They would have just liked to have had some input into that, even though I very clearly told them that they don't get to decide how the money is spent, but they do want to participate in the reviewing of it and give recommendations on how that might be.
I think I provided in one of the digests a summary of all the different contacts staff had with the committee.
Right.
So yeah,
It wasn't
we'll
a big
continue
thing. It was just
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in the future, as we talk through, and then even some of these budget maneuvers that we do, they thought that there was some money being spent that they hadn't seen, but we talked that through. But just in the future, they would like to be given that opportunity to review and recommend. And I said we definitely take that seriously and provide that whenever we had the opportunity also to do that. And then on November 10th, went to the Louisville Library Board meeting. They hope their budget for 2017 is approved tomorrow night. Louisville has a council meeting, and they're waiting because they have some things that they have to do, and they had to maneuver some of their activities for next year. But the very important thing that I thought is good for all of us to know here in the town of Superior is that Louisville Library is part of the Flatirons Library Consortium. And it used to be only 3 members, but now it's expanding to 6 members. 6-member libraries are involved in this consortium. So it gives us access to over 1 million items that we can check out. Over 1 million items. So if you go online onto the library, onto the library website, Louisville Library website, you not only can check out the 90,000 items that are in the Louisville Library, but you can also check out and have available to you. You can go pick up any item. They'll bring it from the other libraries and bring it to the Louisville Library, and then you can go pick it up right there from there. So it's a great opportunity to expand the amount of items that we can actually check out. It's a great resource. And they've already added 1, so they have 4, and then they're going to add 2 more here at the late this year and at the beginning of next year. So there's 6 different libraries that are participating, and that gives us access to 1 million different items that we can check out. So do check out their website and then also see, because in their maker space that they have there is pretty fantastic, and the things that they do that you can make, and the cameras and all the other things that are going on. It's a pretty exciting thing. So that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to also add my congratulations to the new trustees. Welcome to the board, and we look forward to having you up here. I also want to say congratulations and thank you to all the other candidates that ran that were not successful. It's as all of us know, it's a large task to put yourself out there as a candidate and run, and several of the other individuals are already serving on committees and commissions in our town, and so just really appreciate everyone's commitment to the town And I think it says a lot when 9 people choose to run in such a small town. So it's great to see that level of interest in our board. So appreciate that. On the 25th, I went to a farewell reception for our 3 outgoing trustees, and that was well attended and nice to see everyone there. On the 27th of October, I had a meeting with the executive director of the WOW Museum. For those that don't know, the WOW Museum is probably the premier children's museum in the region, located in Lafayette. They get about 80,000 visitors a year. They are looking for a new space in the next 3 to 5 years, somewhere along the western US 36 corridor, ideally up to 20,000 square feet, ideally with free or reduced rent, and that's going to be the tough part. So it's great to make that connection, and just good to keep that in the back of our minds. On the 28th, the town manager and I met with the Brixmor representative, talked about Superior Marketplace, and just discussed the overall center, reviewed the Urban Land Institute visit that we recently had, and discussed some signage and landscape improvements that could be made to help keep the center viable. Next day, on the 29th, I attended the Verizon store grand opening ribbon cutting event, and it was well attended by our chamber. The chamber always does a great job of getting people out, and I think businesses are always amazed that such a small town has such a large presence at grand openings, and I love grand openings and the big scissors. It's just always a favorite of mine. So this is a retail location for Verizon, and they also do training for this is their first store. This is kind of a reseller of Verizon products, and they are doing training in this center as well. So they're not only a retail service center, but a training center as well. So it's great to see them kind of use this as their first and main location. On the 31st, Halloween, I went to an RTD quarterly meeting. The US 36 Mayors and Commissioners Group gets a quarterly meeting with RTD executives to talk about all things RTD. And unfortunately, the report was not that great. Despite a healthy economy in the Denver metro area, RTD is not meeting their sales tax revenue projections. And so they're saying that service levels are going to be pretty much status quo through the mid-2020s, which means no service increases on regular routes. Some Flatiron Flyer service schedule increases are scheduled in 2021, but I've already personally experienced some standing room only trips. So the Flatiron Flyer is doing very well in ridership, and only expect that to increase. So hopefully they can meet that capacity without diminishing the experience and hurting it.
Especially with the Bronco games.
Yes, very popular.
All those buses are full.
I took it to the airport, and it was awesome. One stop. It was like a great
airport
seat.
service is great. EcoPass covers your airport service, and it's really nice. The A and B train lines, the University of Colorado A line from Union Station to the airport, and B line, which is Westminster to Union Station, they're also both open, of course, and they're exceeding their ridership projections as well. But they are having some ongoing crossing gate problems, and their crossing gates are going down too soon, and they've had to put flaggers at each of the crossings to make sure people don't try to get across when the gates are down but no trains are coming, and then end up getting hit. This is the very first commuter rail line that is being built from the ground up with the positive train control systems installed, and that is the technology that will hopefully prevent some of the very bad commuter crashes and all rail crashes that have happened due to kind of outdated technology. So this is latest technology, but it's, as with anything new, it's going to take some time to work out. They have received some waivers from the Federal Railroad Administration to continue operating, so they're continuing to work on that.
Do we have any ridership numbers for the Superior Call-in Ride yet?
Do not. I imagine that'll be coming soon, but from what I've heard, it's very good. I've heard some.
Got a newsletter from one of the schools, and they're promoting it to the students and parents.
Yes.
$1.30 per student to ride it to school in a pinch. So
That was a complaint at my first Friday. The unreliability of the pickup to get to the airport back home from the airport, to the AB bus and back home from it when it came in. And I would actually sort of welcome maybe, I don't know if you can do a survey monkey or something to the community, so the community has an opportunity to share with us in some organized format their experiences with it, so that we can proactively manage that to keep ridership up.
So along those lines, the city of Centennial is doing a pilot program with Uber and Lyft, supplementing call and ride service. And having personally done that here in Superior, it works great. So as a backup, I guess, if the call and ride is not timely available in a timely fashion, Uber works great, and it's about $6 to get from your house to the nearest bus stop. So that's another option, and possibly something that RTD could be rolling out in other communities as well, because they're realizing that it's not possible to be everywhere at once, and so maybe this other option might be a good.
Share their results?
Yes. Yes. One other RTD item, the art funding for our BRT station is on hold, and our art committee hasn't really finished their work either, so it's not really affecting us, but the actual funding, once we do have a design, the actual funding is being delayed a little bit as the US 36 project wraps up, but they're expecting that funding will be eventual, but it's just delayed. On the 1st of November, I went to the Colorado Department of Transportation's annual Transportation Summit, and a lot of focus there on new technologies. Colorado, as many people probably know, is the first state in the United States to coordinate a test run of a self-driving semi-truck that took a load from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs on the highway with no driver behind the wheel. And it was pretty amazing to watch the demonstration.
I thought there was a
video
driver behind the wheel, just wasn't actually
They
steering.
were in the sleeper
Chase car.
cab in the back.
Yeah.
Now, they were in the vehicle, but
Oh,
they
they
were
were.
in the back.
What purpose would they serve being in the back if they don't have the ability to take over just in case?
Well, it's they were testing the technology. I got to climb in this vehicle. It was pretty amazing, and I talked to the driver and got the whole rundown on it. It was pretty amazing. But
The
they did this at night.
Right, the sleeper.
The promotional video showed them driving it during the day, but the actual test was done at night. They had state patrol in front of them, behind them, and they had a very large insurance policy if anything went terribly wrong.
Did they have
which
any
it did.
beer, though?
It was fully loaded with
Okay,
Budweiser,
well, there you
yes.
go. That's all that
Fully
counts.
loaded. But it's great to see that we've got a state Department of Transportation embracing these new technologies. They're coming, and you're either going to be playing catch up or you're going to be kind of leading with them. And I think it's refreshing that we've got a new Department of Transportation head, and he's really bringing some interesting and new things to our state. So it's great. The 3rd of November, I went to Metro Mayor's Executive Committee meeting and also a Transportation Committee meeting. And there's going to be lots of discussion about transportation projects in the state legislature of the upcoming 2017 session. And Metro Mayors wants to definitely be a part of that discussion. They're going to try to early on get a group of stakeholders from state legislators and others together to try to corral people and get a single point of movement in transportation funding. On the 9th of November, I met with a pastor of Ascent Church. As many know, they're the church that's operating out of this former Sam's Club space in Louisville. They are looking for a site to build a current home in the Boulder Valley region. So we talked about some of the options in Superior and surrounding communities. So just it was great to kind of make that connection and discuss the possibilities there. 14th of, that was today. this morning. I went to a US 36 toll revenue meeting. So the US 36 project has a requirement for an annual meeting to review toll revenue and performance, and this morning's meeting was the very first of this annual meeting, which will be happening for the next 50 years because it's a 50-year deal. And the takeaways I took from there, the toll lane traffic on both US 36 and I-25 toll lanes is higher than initially projected, so that's good. It's performing well. And as I've been announcing for several weeks, we are going to see a switch over from HOV2 to HOV3 on January 1st, and certainly going to create a lot more discussion as we get closer to that. And so to that end, I've invited the representative from the Department of Transportation to come in to talk to the board and really the whole town about the history of the US 36 project and kind of what led us to what we have now and some of the reasonings behind this switch over from HOV 2-3. So that'll be coming probably in the first part of January. All right, and town's broadband measure passed on the ballot, so thank you for all supporting that. It got very big level of support. We are going to be studying options in 2017, so more discussion to come on that. We have a new app for reporting issues around town, potholes, lights out, that sort of thing. Superior Click and Fix. I just put it on my phone, so download it from your favorite app store, and you can just see click fix. Anyway, see click fix or Superior Click Fix. So that's another great option for kind of quickly, because everyone's out and about. You've got your phone with you. Great way to report things, not have to take notes and think to report it later. Town hall expansion. Residents, some people have asked me, when are we going to be talking about that next? Don't have a specific date on the agenda at this time, but what we are doing is we're going to be getting our new board members up to speed on a number of things. And one of the items on their list of things to do is an orientation of town facilities around town, and not just the office spaces, but also the water plant, the sewer plant, and so on. Once those tours are concluded, and by the way, new or existing board members are welcome to join on those as schedules permit. But once those tours are concluded, then we'll be in a better position to restart those discussions, which will, of course, all be advanced notice before those take place. So, all right, that takes care of my announcements, and it's a good thing we didn't defer this until the next meeting, because I would have had a few more pages. No, I would have had them. We would just had to sit here for longer. All right,
I don't have anything to add.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, town clerk. Okay, very good. Anyone in the public like to make public comment? Public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, no public comment. Presentations. Ms. Craycraft, Superior Chamber update.
Hello. Actually, I will go ahead and say we do not have anything to report at this time. So I appreciate the time from the staff on the agenda, but we'll look forward to reporting on the 28th.
Great. Thank you. All right. And next we have the consent agenda. We have some board meeting minutes and some committee meeting minutes and a proclamation for Colorado and Metro Area 2016 National Hunger and Homeless Awareness. I'll entertain a motion to the consent agenda. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Hansen, second by Trustee Dozell. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, anything further for the regular meeting? Okay. We will now adjourn for the work session. Thank you.
Don't think that this is what it's going to be.
This will be the standard for all meetings.
Yeah, this is the shortest.
Okay, so the new board's welcome to come up and test out these seats.
I just recovered a pillow off my seat. So I guess I should throw it out. It's not an expensive $600. Looks like
longer arms than I do. You want to put
Can
that
they
up there.
put their signs out?
I don't know why
Or
not.
if they turn them
Nope, the other way.
sideways.
Yeah, we have to turn them backwards, yeah.
Just so your kids can see you coming?
Yeah, so if anybody's watching, they can see that you're at least, you're tentatively.
Camera operator too, when he puts his name up on the screen. So.
Yeah, because the camera operator actually will throw your name at the bottom eventually.
Actually.
Good-looking boy. Yes. Everybody settled in?
Elia, you can come visit anytime.
I will. But I'm there.
All right, let's jump right into our work session.
So one of the first things we like to do after an election is go through some organizational issues with the new board, just to determine how you would like to proceed throughout the year. Some of the things we cover is when you want to have your meetings, because that's set per the code, and you can amend the code if you'd rather have it on a different day. Meeting in times. I'm just kind of covering some of those things we'll talk about, but we'll just start right at the top of the memo with board meetings. And town board meetings right now, per the code, are on the second and fourth Monday of the month, starting at 7 p.m. This is typically, historically, how the day that we've had the meetings ever since I've been here. We've had them on Mondays. I think probably Phil's would say it's how we've always done it, is on Mondays. So some cities do it on a Tuesday night. Some cities do it on another day of the week. But Mondays seems to have worked fairly well for the town. The only conflicts we have is typically during a holiday. And then we just hold the meeting on the following Tuesday if it falls on a holiday day. So that's, kind of the first question for the board is if you'd like to continue to have the regularly scheduled meetings on a Monday.
I like them the way they are.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm used to them.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, because we've already, I think you all knew that when you went for office, that they were going to be on Monday, so.
It'd probably mess you up badly if we changed it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know some board members have requested to know as far in advance as that we could provide them on when the meetings were so they could set their schedules, so.
Yes. Is this the point also where we would discuss perhaps taking a meeting or two off, such as we've done the last 2 years?
That's one of the items further down.
Okay,
We'll-
okay.
We'll get there.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah, so
Yes,
follow up to the
thank you.
regularly scheduled meetings of Monday at 7 is, our current practice is to have work sessions an hour prior to the regular meeting. In the past, at some point in the past, we also did them on an off Monday. So the first and third Mondays, we've done that before for work sessions, so you have more time. You have 2 hours or 3 hours to spend on an issue if you'd like. I don't think we've done any other type of, it's always been on a Monday, and it's either been prior to a regular meeting or on an off Monday. So just wanted to see what the board wished to do moving forward, now that we have a new board. If you'd like to continue on prior to a regular meeting, 1 hour, or on an off Monday, or another day of the week.
And sometimes we start at 5:30.
Sometimes we
If we're
start
going
at
to have a dinner.
5:30. Or
with-
earlier, yeah.
Or earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, the retreats, we start earlier, which are quarterly, but sometimes we might start a little earlier if we're going to have a dinner with someone, or if we have some extra things that would take longer than the hour.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
I would prefer to keep it the way it is. Every night of the week except Fridays, I've had booked out for 6 years. And so, no, seriously, so every Monday is spoken for. So even the first and third Mondays are spoken for with other things. So if we could keep them the way they are, it works. So we're already booked out that Monday night for a board meeting. Might as well start an hour earlier or whatever it takes on the same Monday night if that works for everybody else.
I'm more on format. I pushed for this when I was newly elected, and I believe others did too, about the informal around the table we just had.
Right.
Has our recording system improved enough to handle that?
It's It's not as good as having you sit up at the dais, of course, where the microphone's right there. It's easier for people to hear at home. The mics we put out on the table, they pick up a lot of the conversation, but it's, yeah. So it's not ideal, but it works.
I didn't catch Jim's comment.
He watched it. He said it was good. Yeah.
The one around in the middle just now? Well, it's just, I think it's more inviting to the residents attending, et cetera, et cetera. It seems less formal, which is what it's supposed to seem. So I like that around the table and then coming up here for the official thing. So how does anybody else feel? Fine.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Monday before the regular meeting works well for me.
Now, how about the table?
Tables,
Better?
I think
than up
it
here?
would very much be appreciated, I think, by
Okay.
a number of the folks I talked to who are looking for something less formal to interact with.
Opinions?
I agree.
And I definitely prefer having work sessions on the same night as the board meeting. It decreases the likelihood there'll be a conflict with a Monday night football game, so.
And then, so as far as your comment on doing the work sessions around tables rather than at the dais, is that the preferred method of the board?
This is, we can't vote. We can just nod, huh?
Yeah.
You can do a show of hands.
Huh?
You can do a show of hands, it's fine.
Okay.
I think I'm generally in favor of that. I think it just depends on the topic. I mean, there might be some topic or something that lends itself more to having us up here, maybe where we all view that, and we've got one person at the podium, that sort of thing. It might be better, just depending on just if it's more of a presentation, like we had from the airport guy. I think that I think certain topics are, around the table. Half of you're going to have your backs to the, you got to turn around, and
I agree with that.
And then, yeah. So I think depending on the topic, but if it's more of a discussion, I agree. It's more inviting to have people
I actually
on the table.
would even take it the extra step to have plenty of chairs and make the audience feel part of the work session rather than part of the audience. So anyway, maybe we can morph these along as we go.
Well, and for the first part of the year, as in the past, we've scheduled dinners with the advisory committees, and that gets us through May at least, usually to meet with all the advisory committees. So for the first part of the year, we'll be
Okay.
around tables mostly anyways, so. But we'll plan on that unless we have a formal presentation, and then we'll have you up.
Can we comment on the dinners with the advisory committee, or is that
Sure,
later?
yeah.
Okay. We used to start those at 5, I thought. And then this year, we changed them to like 5:45 or something.
Yeah, 5:45 to 6.
That wasn't enough time. By the time, the 5:45 is too late. I'd like to at least 5:30, whatever, because by the time you all get your food and you chat and whatever, there wasn't much time for the other stuff. So, like those returned a little bit back to the time frame they used to be. When did we used to start them?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember.
I would say no later than 5:30. And depending on the committee, if it's a committee that has a lot of issues they want to share with us, then even 5:15, because it's their one time a year.
Is that, so I guess a question for maybe the new board members, is there a time that's too early for you to be able to make it down to like if we started a dinner at 5:30 or 5, or as far as scheduling goes, and
It's not an issue for me.
I'm just at the mercy of 36
right,
coming
yeah.
from Denver. But
Okay, all right.
I'll make things work.
Okay.
I think 5:30 was what we usually had all the last 2 years that I've been here. and that worked fine. I don't think we have ever started, except for a retreat, then we start those earlier, but the dinners have all worked at 5:30. And then usually some of us will come in and get our food first, and then if you're done eating by 5:30, you can start talking, so.
Fine.
Thank you. Next item I have for the board is meeting end time.
I think we should end the meetings at 1 in the morning.
1 a.m. or 1
Yeah.
p.m.?
But that's what you used to do, wasn't it?
That's right, that's right.
So currently, the board has an informal policy to try to end the meetings at 10:30. And for the most part, have stuck to that, with the option to extend that if needed, if they're on an issue and they need more time. But I'm assuming the board would like to try to stick to that policy of shooting for 10:30 and either extending an issue to the next meeting or tabling it or.
Right, that's the preference. If
I wouldn't
we-
mind shooting for 10. but-
Right, and we could probably do that, but the point is that if we have something that's gonna take longer, we need to be
Right.
willing to, and acknowledge that we're gonna
Yes.
extend it to the next meeting. Instead of in the past, it was you stayed until you had it done, even if everybody was
Right.
crashing and burning at the table.
Sorry, just taking notes.
No later than 10:30, but like you said, Chris, if we can shoot for 10, that makes sense, but no later than
We
10:30.
got done at 7:35 tonight.
I know, and that was a highly irregular opportunity, so.
Next item is cancellation of meetings. So, the previous board had determined to cancel a couple of meetings ahead of time in the year, just so everybody could schedule. One was the second meeting in December, which is typically around Christmas break, and then one meeting in July, whether it's the first or second meeting in July, we switched. Last year, I think, was the first, the year before that was the second, for extended summer break to accommodate travel plans, so, and then spring break, we have canceled that meeting around the school spring break time in past, but last year we kept it, because we have a majority board members here, so.
We kept it, I think, because oddly it fell
Outside.
off of,
Yeah.
it was an off week, but I'm looking at the 2017 calendar, and the 27th is spring break week, and that would be a meeting night, so I would be in favor of taking that meeting off. Or that,
Yes. I can tell you, I know I'm gone on that night, or that day, so it'd be good.
I'm sorry, we're talking about the spring break time?
Spring break 2017,
27th of
so
March.
March 27th, second meeting in March.
Preference from any others on that week of spring break for school?
Not opposed to taking it off, but don't need to, but I'd be fine taking it off. And I think we should stick to taking off definitely the Christmas, that second meeting in December. And then, I would like to take one off around the 4th of July, too. I think that's also a good, if we know that we're gonna
Right.
take it off, then people can plan some things in that timeframe, too. Those would be the three. I
So
don't-
July, well, the July meeting falls on July 10th, which is a full week, well, not quite a full week after the 4th of July.
Mhm.
So maybe, I mean, would the second meeting in July be better for people?
I'm likely on vacation July 24th, so that would be better for me.
I tend to agree with that. I think the latter part of July is kind of, people are trying to pack it in before that August
Back to school,
back
yeah.
to school
Mhm.
gets busy, so.
The Boulder Valley Swim Championship for the residents that swim, that is
The
July
22nd.
21st and 22nd.
Yes, so everybody's
Right.
out of
Going
there.
after that.
Yep. Yep.
I just think it's good to take one off if we can. I don't care which meeting. So those three are the ones that, to me, I think make sense. I've participated in the last 2 years. Taking off the spring break, of course, we said this year we didn't have to, but, and then the Christmas one, and then one in the summer, like the 4th, around sometime in July.
And this year and next year, Thanksgiving
Early.
is the week before
Right.
the week of the meeting. So I think that it works for us to have 2 meetings in November.
Right, okay.
So, just want to be clear, I've got second meeting in December, second meeting in July for 2017, and the week of spring, the second meeting in March.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Anything that I didn't have in the cover memo as far as meetings, schedule, timing, that the board would like to discuss that's, we didn't think of as far as our memo goes or information we provided to you? Okay. The next topic we had is the role of advisory boards and commissions. So the board members, we have a number of committees, which I think everybody's familiar with. And we have in our code how the committees are formed, how they operate, how many members they have, when they meet. Those things are in the code. And as far as filling the advisory committees with members, interviewing, just so everybody's comfortable with work plans. Committees work on work plans every year, and at the first meeting in July, the board sees those work plans and reviews and approves them. And then the committees have those to work on for that year. So it's important that the board is comfortable with keeping this process as far as work plans. I think it seems to me like it works well because it gives the committees, they know what to work on for the year, and if they want to add something or change something, then they'll come back and ask the board to add that to the work plan. So, and then we have committee liaisons that the board will fill. We'll talk about that next, at the next item coming up, but just want to make sure that we're going to continue with work plans and the board's comfortable with that process as far as the committees go.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring it up, but we've been sort of dancing around this issue of planning commission and how we choose planning commissioners, et cetera, and now we've got 3 of them, 3 former ones, and I'd sort of like to have a discussion on the role of the planning commission. Should commissioners be populated by former committee members on the other advisory committees rather than green off, with no, or at least have HOA experience or whatnot? So we keep sort of circling around that one. I'd like this year to make it a priority to either say it's fine as it is or, recommend some changes.
Well, I'll just chime in and say that I started there without having any experience on other committees, but I did so because of my real estate background, and I was attracted to Planning Commission because of my real estate background, and I don't know that I would have gone to one of the other committees, and if I'd been told, well, you got to start here in order to get here, I don't know that I would have done that. So I don't know that we want to do something that's going to preclude somebody. And how do you say that somebody with 20 years of real estate experience is not somehow qualified to, or somebody, with you fill in the blank, experience.
That's the exact type of discussion I'd like to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we may end up right where we are.
Okay.
But I think it's just worthwhile because it's pretty hard being a planning commissioner right now with the onslaught of all the Superior Town Center stuff. But at least we can create maybe some expectations that, there are documents that would be very useful to be reviewed, like cost-sharing agreement and all that kind of stuff, to understand certain documents before, when you're brand new to the planning commission. Maybe we had talked at one point about doing some sort of training with them like we do with new trustees. So maybe that's what we do. Maybe the issue isn't the greenness of the planning commissioner, but it's how we groom them once they're here.
I think it's selection and training. I mean, I think the real objective of the board is to make sure that you're putting people on that commission that are qualified to be there, demonstrate that they have either they bring knowledge or they bring the desire to gain the knowledge. But yeah, we do the selecting, but then I think we also help with the knowledge base by creating opportunities for them to learn.
And then Joe Sorelli raised this issue of whether or not we've taken too much responsibility away from them, and should we give some of it back? And then during the election, actually, this issue of, is there a time when there's a conflict of interest for a planning commissioner? To identify those potential conflicts as well. So it just seems to me like it's worth sitting around the table for an hour discussing and figuring out if we want to do something and what that might be.
So is that maybe a retreat topic for January?
Yeah, and we had a discussion about this at the last retreat, I believe, and
Right.
started to implement some of those things, asking them to attend at least 2 planning commission meetings, I think,
Right.
and review the comprehensive plan. So we've started to do some of those.
Right.
And some of it, we may have to change the code depending on what.
Some of it we may not be able to do because we're statutory and. so
That would
for-
be good to know.
Yep, so we can talk about that. I mean, I think adding additional qualifications may be problematic.
Okay.
The state law only requires that you be a resident of the municipality. Now, that doesn't mean if you have more applicants for the number of positions open, that you can't choose someone with more experience or more interest or more, something like that. But the qualification, the basic qualification is set forth in the statute,
Yeah.
so.
How many applicants do we typically have when we have a vacancy on planning commission?
Usually we have at least a couple, depending on how many spots. We already have one for yours. But usually we all get 2 or 3 interested.
But if we have one open spot and only one applicant, we're not required to approve them. I mean, we can.
No, that's what I'm saying. So
No.
you can certainly sort of weight candidates based on their experience and things like that, but to make it a minimum qualification, for example, that you can only apply if you've served on blank, I think will be problematic. You can certainly give weight to that and say, well, look, they've already served on such and such committee, or they have a lot of experience in this area, or whatever other, you can certainly give weight to that, but it shouldn't be a minimum qualification. So that's all and that's a fine line, because if you get someone with more experience and more qualifications, then you will likely choose them over someone else. But I think anyone who is a resident is able to apply to you, and then you get to choose who you think is the best candidate.
And we did have this discussion about, because we talked about the fact that the planning commission doesn't get to see some of these concept plans. We've reviewed them as a board, and then we send them back to the developer, and then the developer and staff work together and come up, and then it goes through the planning commission, and it's kind of like, well, wait a second, what have they seen, what have the board already done, and I would rather have the planning commission look at some of those things for the first time. I mean, it's a fine line between whether or not you want to have the board look at it and say, yeah, we like this. But then the concept needs to go back to the planning commission, not a final development plan, but a concept plan, to have some of those basic questions answered and some of that work done before it comes back as an FDP to the planning commission and then on to us at the board. I think that I would have liked that as a planning commissioner, to have seen some of these concept plans rather than having to have viewed them at the board as a resident, basically, and then go have them come back as an FDP when there's other questions that we could have answered prior to them getting there. I think we've convoluted the process a little bit.
I agree with Rita, because one of the frustrating things for planning is if planning is not involved in the concept, but then we get the FDP, and then, planning would go forward and approve something, and then it comes up to the board, and the board said, well, wait a second, this doesn't actually match what the concept plan is.
Right.
We're just wasting everybody's time, so there's efficiencies that are built in by allowing the planning commission to be, more involved in the process, in a cohesive way with the board, so that we're just not wasting people's time by approving FDPs that the board's ultimately gonna reject. Because if the planning commission knew what the board actually wanted to do and was involved in the concept plan, maybe
What-
the FDP wouldn't have gotten approved in the first place.
Right, and that's the part that I think is more of a detriment to the town, is that there were times when the planning commission says, well, the board's already seen this concept plan and approved it. So why are we're just moving on to them because they're gonna decide, them being the board is gonna decide anyway. And I don't wanna ever have that happen. I want the planning commission to look at it fully
So-
and to vet it for us before we get it.
When's our next retreat? January? So
January
we
9th.
can put this on there and save all this good stuff for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say that the concept plans are voluntary, so an applicant doesn't have to necessarily choose to do a concept plan. And I think it ties back into, as far as planning commission's involvement on what what decision-making authority the planning commission has. Because right now, everything's review and recommend with no decision points. So I think that adds weight to the planning commission's role if the board decides to implement or reinstall some of those decision points with the planning commission.
And that only makes it a stronger process, a review process, I believe, to do it the way we've just been discussing. Is I think that's what we have the quasi-judicial planning commission for, is to review all of this stuff before it actually gets to us. We're supposed to review a final development plan here. We shouldn't be going through concept that has never even been looked at by the planning commission. I just don't think that's the right way to go about it. So we just need to tweak the order of things. And they already have, the planning commission is already quasi-judicial, so they do have some authority to do some things. We just need to understand what that is. And they need to understand what it is.
And on a related topic I wanted to bring up, is there any chance, and I don't know whether this is proven or not, that when we have appointments to the advisory committees, or you're considering appointments to the advisory committee, can we at least see the applicants, can the committee see the applicants, so they could say, oh, well, we believe this person would be a solid addition because they have a knowledge base that we don't have? Because oftentimes, even on ProStack, we didn't really have any involvement in the process. And I think that would be valuable, at least to have, if nothing else, the chair say, this person could bring a skill level to the group that we don't, they wouldn't get a yes or no, but they could at least see the application. So I'd like to see us consider whether that might be a possibility too.
So a review and recommendation from the committees to the board?
Well, if they could just give some input, and not necessarily a recommendation or a yes or a no, because we don't really want to see it become, a click or anything like
Right,
that.
yeah.
But I'd like to see at least the chair have the opportunity to know who the applicants are, and if there were, multiple applicants, say, well, what we're really looking for is somebody who's got some expertise in trails, or, something like that, or somebody that has a particular interest there. I just think it would be valuable for the chair, at least, to be able to see the applicants and at least provide some feedback about why they think they might be a good addition.
Comfortable with that,
Okay,
Chris?
moving along so we get out of here by 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
we got 2 hours, come on.
You're so nonchalant, man. I'm just kind of like, I'm trying to speed it along.
Next item I have is public comment. This is something that's set by the board. Different cities do it different ways. We have set 5 minutes for public comment on non-agenda and consent agenda items. Seems to work well. The procedure for someone wanting to give public comment is listed right on the agenda, so they have that. And that seems to have worked well. I'm not recommending any changes, but just want to verify that the board is comfortable with that process.
The only piece of that that is kind of raised a question in my mind is occasionally we'll have people email things in and say, I want this read into the public record. And we don't have really any guidelines around that. And I guess because we don't, it could kind of backfire on us in that, you know, what time of day is too late to get something, and when is someone going to be mad if I don't read something because it just was emailed simply, you know, when I'm in transit here and it's, you know, not received in time, or maybe I've got a full afternoon and I'm just not able to get to that. So that's, I guess, point number one is what, if we want to continue that, when should it be in by? And then, you know, should 5 minutes apply to that? I mean, that's a long time to, 5 minutes is a long time. Most of our public comments are not 5 minutes. So, you know, does that still apply to that? I've had this discussion with other mayors, and they're like, no, public comment means you come and make public comment or get someone to make public comment. The idea that you email something in to be read into public comment, that just doesn't exist in most, and maybe Kendra can opine on whether this exists in other municipalities or not.
It does, but they have different procedures. So some require that all comments be emailed to a certain email address that will then be compiled by the town clerk and then submitted to you, not read into the record, they will be made part of the record so as not to waste, I shouldn't say waste time, but so as not to use up a lot of time in the public hearing reading comment after comment after comment. That's one way it's done. Most of the cities and towns that I work with take it via email. They do. There's no policy that you have to show up to make it. So, you know, but some do have procedures. It has to be received by 5 o'clock on such and such a date, or it will not be made part of the record. It has to be signed. You have to give your address, your name and your address. You can't just send it from a random email address and expect that it be read in. So there can be some guidelines put around it if that's
Okay.
what the
But
board
what do most of your other municipalities do? Do they actually read it, or do they just
No.
enter it into the public record?
No, they
So-
just enter. They
so
say
none
it
of them
will be
read it?
entered, and then, you know, the town clerk keeps it as part of the record.
And then it's public if somebody wants
Right.
to
And
see it.
and you would all get it in some sort of a packet or, you know, put into a Dropbox or somewhere where you all would have the opportunity to review it. And again, that's why there's usually a deadline given. Must be received by, sometimes it's the packet deadline, you know, so must be received by Thursday at noon or whatever the packet deadline is.
On a controversial topic, let's say I would want to know, for example, if we got 10 of these, I would want to know 5 are for and 5 against. Can we provide a format, I'm sure we can, that says topic, for or against, and that could at least be summarized to the board?
Well, you would get all of
yeah,
them. In other
yeah.
words, if anything that came in on time.
Right.
Okay,
You
all
would
of
get
them.
the
Okay,
actual
good.
comment.
Okay.
Email and there's no time limit because you're getting it in a
Right.
packet
Okay.
beforehand.
Yeah.
But yes, you can also ask for a tally, saying
Yeah,
so
yeah.
many opposed, so many.
But I think that's hard to determine that. That's a
Sometimes-
qualification, you know, not quantification, you know, and I don't think we should get into that. We should read them just like we would hear
If we get them in
speak.
time, we'll read them.
Right,
Yeah.
but-
right. That's
Yeah,
why
we
some
need to
impose a
read them
deadline,
and
so
come off
that
of
you
it.
have time to read them, so they're not coming in at 5 o'clock on the day of a hearing.
But I think that they should be able to come in on the day of the hearing, because a lot of people don't know that there's a topic until after they get the packet or the agenda out on Thursday. So we can't say it has to be done before at the date of the, so I don't have a problem as making it part of the record, which is a lot of times what we used to always do. But we've gotten into this, I think when people think making it part of the record means it has to be read. It doesn't have to be read. So I think we should just make that decision.
And I'm not saying this because it's been a problem. I'm just saying
Yeah.
in concept, it could become, if someone wanted to just, you know, send a whole volume of stuff and we don't have any kind of procedure on how to deal with it, then we're going to be stuck.
Well, that
And
one,
just
I
don't-
think,
just-
you make it part of the record, but you don't necessarily have to read
So,
50 emails.
right, so I would be, yes, so I guess moving forward, and this is a nice time, we've got a new board, and, you know, just a nice time to say, you know, transition on this topic and say, yeah, I'm all for making things part of the record, but this reading things into the record, I tend to lean more towards what Kendra's saying other municipalities do, and
Which is what we've done before, but it
Yes.
seems like lately we've gotten the request to read it in the record, and then you've done, which is great.
Right.
But we don't have to read it, we just make it part of the record.
Well, I like, though, Clint's idea that we actually formalize the policy and we never read it into the record, that we do the policy
Right.
somewhat around what Kendra's been saying, and that, yes, your comments can be submitted. They must be in by, let's say, noon on Monday, if we want to do that, or 10 a.m. on Monday or whatever. They will be forwarded to all the trustees, but they will only be appended in writing rather than read. The reading is arduous, and we do it fast, and I'm not
Yes,
sure
it's-
anybody
It's
can
not
understand.
Yeah,
comprehensible.
it's a reasonable request, and I think if it was important enough to you as a member of the community to make a comment, if you're traveling, which some of us do,
Mhm.
you could ask a neighbor to read it into the record if it's important enough. To ask a trustee or the mayor to read it into the record, well, it's not a problem yet. I do think it is important to sort of set a practice, and I'd be supportive of the practice of you may submit, it will be part of the public record, but it's not going to be read. If it's important enough to you to be read, email a neighbor, ask them to read it. It's reasonable.
Okay.
And one thing I'd like to see if we could change is that I find often, and I never could understand this, that if people go on our website and send something to the board, it just goes to the board, and you, Matt, don't get a
Oh, yeah,
copy.
that-
I think that when it says town board, you should also be CC'd in there. Can you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Can we change that so when they click on town
You know,
board?
I mean, residents are emailing the board, and, you know, I guess my thought on it was, if they wanted to email me, they know.
They don't know.
I don't want them.
That's what the thing is,
Yeah.
they don't know. Because I will tell them, if I'll get it, and I'll say, wait a second, this did not go to the town manager. You know, because if it goes if they just click on email, communicate to the town board,
Right.
that thing that says town board, it literally only goes,
If-
and there's no CC to Matt.
I agree. I mean, if nothing else, for you just to be tracking the conversation,
right.
because sometimes these
Right.
conversations will start, and just, if nothing else, you've got a heads up on something that's going to be brewing for the nightly meeting.
Right.
And you've got, you've been tracking the discussion, so.
And how would we know?
More
that-
emails,
Or
right,
if that
hey.
email got in there by 4 or 5 o'clock on Monday, and like you said, Clint, you didn't see it, or if I saw it, but I'm assuming you're going to make sure it gets part of the record. But, that's why I want Matt to be on that.
But I think this part of the record thing, I think something like noon is only reasonable. I mean, we've got lots of things, I mean, town clerk's got lots of things going on. I mean, you cannot expect things to just happen, last minute. And I think anything in the afternoon of the day of the meeting is,
It hasn't been a problem, though. We haven't gotten like overwhelming numbers of emails, so I tend to
haven't.
not to restrict to like a noon deadline, because some people will be at work and not realize it until they think, oh crap. So I think that by 5 and close of business on the day of the board meeting should be fine, from my perspective. Because I don't think we've ever had a
But then
problem.
someone needs to take responsibility, I think.
That's why we're putting
Yeah.
Matt on the email. That's why he's gotta be on the town board. It can't just be to the board. We don't work here full-time, you know?
Well, the problem is right now that there are people out there that have something to say. Maybe they have a time commitment that prevents them from actually coming here and speaking, but they still have issues that they believe need to be addressed, and they don't want things going into a vacuum and just being ignored. Right. So long as we have a procedure that says, okay, you can come here and give public comment, and it'll be part of the official record, and it'll be recorded, and everybody can hear it. Or alternatively, you can email the board by 12 p.m. the day of the meeting, and it will be appended to the minutes of the meeting, and it'll be part of the record, but it will not be read open for everybody to hear. So everybody has an understanding of what the rules of the game are. And I think at that point, they're being heard.
yeah. And emailing board members, I mean, that's 24/7. I mean, you can do that 24/7, any day, day of meeting, and most of us are checking messages, right up till the moment of the meeting. So but I think in terms of, procedurally, there's one thing, but I mean, practically, people can email us whenever they want.
Right, to make it part of the record, though, is what we're talking about here. And I don't think that we've had a problem with getting an overwhelming number of emails between 12:01 PM and 5 o'clock.
So can we
PM.
have a policy come back to us at the January retreat, proposed policy? And then we can tweak the details?
But quick question on, I mean, how hard is it to enter an email into the record if we're not going to read it?
Yeah, so maybe the time is
So
irrelevant.
I would say
Yeah.
the minutes
right.
aren't even done until after the meeting's done.
Exactly, so I
So maybe
think
the
we're
time's
saying,
irrelevant.
I don't think we should limit it to like a arbitrary 12 noon
No.
kind of a
Well,
thing.
Okay.
The only
Okay.
issue is that you have to have read it for it to be part of the record.
Oh, I thought you said we didn't have to read it.
into
I'm
You
not
have
saying
to
read it out loud,
physically
but
see
you
it.
all have
We
had.
have to
Oh, I
have
see,
seen
I
it.
see.
You have to have seen it, so it's really what time you think that you can get it and still be prepared and have read it yourselves, not out loud, but.
The issue with that is if you received 100 at 5 o'clock.
Right,
Yes.
but we've never had that happen.
I know,
so
I
think
understand,
Instead
yeah,
of planning
yeah,
for something
yeah.
that may possibly happen, like the fact that
And the
somebody
policy-
here has to be not.
The policy can always be adjusted.
Well, can we ever amend the minutes to add something later?
No.
Sure.
You
Not,
can't-
again, I'm talking about public hearings.
Right,
I'm not talking about an issue
Just
that's
a
not
general-
quasi-judicial, but if it's quasi-judicial, it has to be in the record by the close of the public hearing at a minimum, and you all have to have the ability to hear it and or read it.
Okay.
And make it part of your
And most-
decision-making.
And most of the comments that I can think of that I've received and read out loud have not been part of a public hearing. They've been,
It depends.
They're
I think
just-
some on the town center, there were some on the town center
Could-
that came in.
could be, yes.
During that very long series of
Yes.
public hearings.
So
or
are we-
other agenda items that we've had,
Yes.
we'll get emails about them. That's really a public, it's not a hearing like with a applicant, but it's a hearing on a possible resolution or something, so wouldn't that be something too that needs to be considered?
But it's
As
just,
part of the public hearing discussion?
it only matters, the record being so strict only matters in the context of a quasi-judicial public hearing. So
Right.
land use, liquor licenses, those kinds of things.
Right.
But if you don't get something before you adopt a resolution, before you approve a resolution, you haven't seen it, then I don't know that you would add it to the minutes later because
No.
it hasn't been part of your deliberative process in any way.
Mhm.
So it would be unusual to add something afterwards, is what I'm saying. So I would put a deadline in of some sort, just a deadline to make sure that you all can at least open up your, wherever it goes to. Let's say we put it in a Dropbox or whatever it is, enough time for you to say, okay, I've read it. Because if you're all sitting here in a public hearing listening, you're not gonna be able to read it at the same time.
Right,
So
right,
that's
right.
all. That's why I think there should be some deadline prior to the meeting that you can at least take 2 minutes and read it, whatever it may be.
And my question is, I don't think 12 is appropriate, so, and I would prefer 5, because that gives us 2 hours before the public meeting starts to read those things.
Yeah, but if we start a work session at 5, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
or
I said it has to be reviewed.
or retreat
Right.
day. I mean, I think we have to,
Well, we have access to our emails at those times. We're only talking about the 7 o'clock public meeting. But I think we are spending
Yeah.
too much time on it because it's not been an issue. The
it
issue
hasn't.
is-
I- It hasn't. I just only brought it up because there's no policy, and I think absent a policy is only.
The
I just
policy
think there should
has
be.
been that if someone sends you an email and says, please make this part of the public record, it doesn't mean we have to read it. And if they ask to have it read, doesn't mean we have to read it either. We can just make it as part of the public
I
record.
just would rather have a policy saying that I'm not
Yeah, I
reading
agree.
it instead of just, oh, well, Clint just didn't like me, something
Right.
like that.
We're not changing, we're just going
We'll
back
draft
to the
the
policy
Okay.
that was in place.
Did, Jim, okay, I thought you had a comment, okay. We covered it, good. I think we covered everything in that conversation.
I actually
Okay.
have a question on this topic.
Yeah.
Is the comment period, in my observation, is occasionally a dialogue and occasionally a public comment where the response is thank you?
Yes.
Is there a policy or practice that it should only be a public comment where the response is thank you? Or is there some abbreviated question, can I do this? And there's some affirmative head nodding, and then that steers the person. Coming from the other side, I've been confused a couple times whether or not this is a dialogue, an opportunity for a dialogue, or comment, thank you, move on.
I think in the policy on the agenda, doesn't it state, the mayor shall decide whether a response to the question or comment is appropriate or may thank the speaker for their question or comment. If a response is deemed appropriate, the mayor may respond on behalf of the town board or refer the matter to the town manager. If a response is to be made at a later time, the respondent shall bring the matter back to the town board for closure. So that's what you have, these are just for general public comments. In the context of a public hearing, it can go either way, because it really depends on how the board and the mayor want to handle it. In other words, if somebody brings up a public comment during a public hearing that asks a good question, then maybe the board says, wait, that's a great question, we want an answer, and then brings the applicant back up. So that one's a little tougher, but I think on the general public comment at the beginning of each meeting, that's the way it's been dealt with in the past. That if it's a quick answer and the town manager, I can just say, no, yes, that we'll do it then, but it's really up to the mayor.
And sometimes board members
Board
will
members will
have,
do that too.
you
We'll
know,
ask
board
either
members
go
will
back
jump,
or to the
you know,
town
board
manager.
members will either ask a follow-up question or they'll jump in with an answer. So I think I think we generally try to follow what's on the agenda, but it really just depends on
And it's
what-
not been an issue, right? We haven't.
It really hasn't been.
Well, we modified that in this 2 years ago. When
Yes, you
Clint,
did.
when you and I came on, we had a discussion about that because in previous boards, generally what happened is there was no comment back. And then people would get very frustrated. I come up here and I've got an issue on a consent or non-agenda item, and I need response from my elected officials. And so it was that everybody had to sit here stiffly and not make any facial expressions or comment. And we said, no, that's not appropriate. If we have an answer that we can give, or if we can correct a misstatement
Right.
of information, then we correct it right here on the spot, on camera. None of this sitting here with Botox look and not giving a response.
But I think since I've been on the board, though, we've done what we've done over the last 2 years. If we felt that we needed further
Right.
discussion, we've gone to the town manager, or if we've had a question of whoever's given comment, we've done it. So I don't think it's really changed in the last 6 years anyway.
Yeah, we,
There was less response previously to this board.
frankly,
you know.
it depends on the personality of the mayor.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
If the mayor doesn't want to answer it, we go down that road. So it's up to you, Clint.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it says, it is up to you as the
Yeah.
mayor
Yeah.
to decide
Well,
whether
and
an immediate response is appropriate. So.
I think that it totally depends on the issue, and you just don't want to get yourselves or the manager or any staff into positions where they're asked to make a decision on the fly. I mean, there's nothing worse than having to make some decision or commitment to do something on the fly when someone springs something on you. That shouldn't be appropriate.
Right, but getting.
Still,
back-
if it's easily
But if it's
answered.
easily answered, I'm all for that.
Or we can defer it or refer
Yes.
it to the manager to meet
Yes.
with that resident.
I mean, reflecting on the last 2 years, I think public comment's gone very well. I mean, on
My
the whole-
only
on the
thing
whole.
is, 5 minutes is a long time. Most, when I appeared at all the city council meetings on the Greenway connection through Rocky Flats, 3 was standard. City of Boulder had a whole room full, and they put it down to 2, which is unworkable. You can't
Right.
even hem and haw, and
Right.
2 minutes
Right.
gone. 5 is a long time, I think, so.
I think it's appropriate, though, because in the past life here, we used to be able to give each other our 3 minutes, and then we stopped that practice. So I think we need to give the opportunity for up to 5 minutes if they
Up
so
to.
chose. Because I used to get minutes handed to me all the time by other residents that, like Arden Simpson would give me his 5 minutes or 3 minutes.
Oh.
And so you'd end up with, and his wife would give you, and others would give you, so you could add. So you get 3, and then 3 more, 6, and then 9. And I think there was a limit of how many you could have, but you could have residents give you, but we stopped that practice. And now it is, instead of the 3 minutes and ability to accept minutes from other residents that were here, then now we said 5 minutes and that's it. No
Yeah,
getting minutes.
I don't have an
from-
issue with the 5 minutes, and I think we've only had maybe a few
Yeah,
occasions
yeah,
when
it's rare.
the mayor's had to say,
Right.
you're done.
And I think it's okay sometimes because we've let them go over if it's
Yeah.
appropriate. And if it's not, you want the limit so you can say, okay, that's it, you're done.
And then
No
we
more new
can
information.
also, if we write this, I don't know how it appears, up to 5 minutes, then on a heavily contested issue like the approval of the Superior Town Center, where you have 50 people in line to speak, the mayor should have the discretion.
Well, that
to
time it was
reduce
only
to
3. That was
Yeah.
when it was 3. It was never 5 at that time. We've changed it to 5. Yeah, I
So-
used to be able to get my 3 minutes from other residents during the town center, and then that's when it got changed at the end of that.
I think it's been 5 since I've been on the board.
Well, it's 3. But anyway, that's fine.
3, 5, that's only 2.
It's only 2 minutes,
not
which isn't
2.
long. I mean, think
Phyllis
how many
has a
minutes we
historic-
talked about this.
Phyllis has a
That's longer than we
historical
have our
perspective.
reports and comments.
I know.
No, I just have a question. Do you want to keep it like we do without the buzzer going off, or do you want me to
No
have the
buzzer.
buzzer?
No buzzer.
The
Okay.
light's good.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
Like the League of
Yeah.
Women Voters, they're all over that buzzer.
Ding, ding, ding. No.
The paddle.
Paddle,
It's hard
Good
to,
idea.
I mean, you can see it in the, you can see it,
They were
Clint, and you
hardcore.
can, it can stop them when they, but when you're up there talking, you don't really notice those lights. You don't see them, because you're talking to the people.
Right.
You don't even see those lights. So, but you can direct them when they're done.
Okay.
So the last topic on this that I have listed is board retreats. Next retreat right now is scheduled for January 9th from 4 to 7 p.m. We canceled the work session the nights we hold retreats. This is how we've done it the past year at least. And it's on the Monday prior to the regular meeting. So just wanted to confirm that the board is
I will
okay
say
with-
to the new board members that we've kind of worked on this for a few years now, trying to dial it in and get it right and on the board retreats. And I think that this has worked pretty well.
Right.
Quarterly, the day of the board meetings. But I'm certainly interested in hearing a different option if we have, but it's been working well for me.
It used to be you'd have a separate retreat date, and then you'd have work sessions on separate off Mondays, and you could end up having 3 or 4 meetings in a month.
Well, and we did them off-site, which was enjoyable, but I think in terms of transparency, in terms of accessibility, tapeability, broadcastability, doing them here, it just makes sense. And doing them before the meetings, it makes for, our last one was, that was a 9-hour day. I mean, that was a long day.
You
Oh,
should,
yeah,
you should
when
have
we
been at
s-
the first one Sandy and I did.
But
That was fun.
it seems to be working. So I agree with you. It's working.
So the 9th at 4 p.m.?
Of January, yes.
And then can we just schedule out? Can we schedule out the next quarter?
So it'll be the first, or the second
Second.
Monday in April.
Okay. 10th.
Second Monday in April, and then the second Monday in
July.
July.
Always at 4 p.m.
Yep.
Right.
But not second Monday in July, because we were taking
Oh,
that
yeah,
one
We're
off.
taking that
Yeah,
off.
so-
Yeah, so we'll have to move that
So we
one
do that
up.
one to August?
Yep, or second.
Wait, we're taking the
Monday
second
in
Monday off or
August.
the fourth? I thought we were.
Second meeting in July.
Oh, second meeting in
Second
July.
week,
Okay.
or second meeting, not week, second meeting.
So you could do the July.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
the July one,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
We're taking off the.
Second
we're
Monday, not
doing-
the second.
Not the second
Oh,
meeting.
you're-
Okay,
Meeting,
sorry.
Yeah, Second Monday.
So
So
it's the first meeting of the first
quarter.
month of each
Of
quarter.
each quarter,
Yeah.
first meeting Monday of each quarter.
So the one closer to the 4th of July you're taking off?
No,
No, we're taking off the second Monday.
because the 4th of
Second
July
meeting,
is
the fourth Monday.
the week before.
Okay, got it.
And then the fourth retreat
March.
is, the fourth
Oh.
retreat
It's
is
in October.
October. So the first Monday meeting, which would be the second Monday in October.
Jeez.
That's Columbus Day, by the way.
Right. We used to have that, it used to be one of the scheduled holidays, and that was changed a number of years back. So we hold that meeting on that day currently.
Colorado generally doesn't like that day as a holiday.
So the next item for discussion is, the board has a number of representative and committee assignments that board members participate in. Like to, after each election, reaffirm or make any changes that the board would like to make with regard to these assignments. Once we get direction tonight from the board, we'll bring back a resolution just to confirm those changes, if any. or reaffirm those committee assignments. Let's see here. So I provided you an attachment that lists all the various committees that board members are assigned to, and thank you to Trustee-elect Hammerly for providing that information on each of the groups that we participate in. I've listed, starting with the first, Boulder County Consortium of Cities, I listed when they meet, which is, and Trustee Hansen can confirm, every other month on the first Wednesday, starting at 6:30. Mayor Pro Tem Hansen is the representative, and Trustee Dozell is the alternate. So just wanted to either confirm that we want to keep those assignments, or if somebody wants to change.
I'd like to stay as the rep, because I was the alternate the whole time that Trustee Skumatz was here, so I'd like to stay in that position as the primary.
And I became the alternate after Deb Williams left, because she was the alternate. So if someone else wants to be alternate, that's fine, or I'll stay an alternate, but if somebody else would be interested in filling in when Chris isn't available, that
Can we,
one's available.
sort of temporarily do this and go through and see how it all works out, and then,
Sure.
because the point is, yeah, I might be interested in being the alternate to that, but not if I
Get something else,
get
right?
something
Yeah,
else
Sure.
to occupy my time.
The Boulder County Resource Conservation Advisory Board is kind of like our recycling committee that we have here, but Boulder County-wide. Staff is the representative on that, and it seems to work out well. I mean, if a board member is interested in being the liaison for that, we can make that change as well. Colorado Municipal League has a policy committee. This is where they set policy on what legislative items are going to go to the state legislature. Chris has been the member of the board for that.
And that, yeah, I could give that up. I mean, I don't have a problem doing it, but if somebody else is really interested in doing that, yeah.
The Denver Regional Council of Governments, or Dr. COG, meets the third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. That's down in Denver. So there's a little bit of a drive.
And the first Wednesday of the month, we have a work session.
Right. Yep.
So there's two meetings a month.
Where
So
in Denver is
I'll-
it?
hmm?
Where in Denver is it?
It's in the, it's on 13th and Broadway, right
By the
next door to the
Capitol.
the new federal
Yeah.
courthouse building on Broadway. It's a big, tall. it's a-
13th and Broadway?
13th and Broadway.
Is it down by the library?
Mm-hmm. Directly across from the library. Right.
Is that where you work?
Pretty close. So you're talking by the new Supreme Court building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's right across the street from that.
So you want to keep doing that, though?
I'd
Right.
prefer to keep doing that.
Okay, and I'm happy to give up the alternate role on that, because not listed on here is the Cultural Arts Public Spaces Group.
Right, yeah.
So,
But I would give that up if that was something that, I mean, if it worked out better for you, because, you're going to want something, Mark, that you can, you will just have to understand, you're already in Denver, so, and I drive in usually with Ashley.
here's a recommendation. Deborah was the primary, and I was an alternate. That is such a complex topic that perhaps you'll want to take over as alternate and attend some of the meetings and get the flow, and it's a complex subject matter. And I felt I went to about 2 years of solid meetings as an alternate just to learn it. And so you might consider doing that, where you keep the primary and he does the alternate for a while too.
And the only one of you, there's 56 board members, and usually there's 25 to 35 that actually show up. So, and only one can actually sit at the board table and vote, but the others can sit in the back.
Yeah, there's a place for.
But, that can be shared. That can be definitely something that's shared. There's a lot of people on there from all the different municipalities and governments, and so it's a very interesting thing. I liked it. I wanted that. That was the one thing I wanted, and I really enjoyed being on that, because they actually hand out $175 million every 3 to 4 years to, and from the federal government primarily. And we've been able to get some of that money, and I think it's really important to be there. We're small, but we've been able to show that we're bigger and more influential, and so it would be something that.
But what I'm saying is, you can cross me off as alternate if there's anybody interested in doing that.
Mhm.
Well, the only question I had was, it seems like most of the issues that we've been involved with have been transportation related. But when you go on to their website, you can see there's other topics that they also deal with, one of which is area aging activities. And
Yeah, the
certainly,
AAA.
yeah,
Mhm.
one of the things that I was talking about when I ran for office was making sure that you have communities that are attractive for an aging population. And I know one of their programs that they recently got funding for was a derivation of the AARP's Livable Communities project. And so I do have an interest in that area, but
Mhm.
if it's just a committee that is involved in that area, I'm happy to do that. But I've got a particular interest because of the having communities that are attractive for an aging population.
The AAA, the Area Agency on Aging, as a part of the Older Americans Act from how many years ago, they're the regional AAA, it's called. And they have another subcommittee that meets that just talks about, that's all about the AAA and the aging. And this group actually is the ombudsman for all of the nursing homes and aging facilities, senior facilities throughout the Denver metro area. They actually do audits and everything, and they've shut down in Castle Rock I think it was Castle Rock, shut down a nursing home that was not meeting the standards that were required by the AAA. So they you can participate in that group. I haven't, because I'm also on the finance committee of the organization. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of good things that are going on there at Dr. Cog. Seems odd, but somebody needed to take on the AAA for this metro area. So then it fit into the Dr. Cog, which has been around since 1962 or 9 or something like that. Dr. Cog's been around for a long time.
So she could presumably serve on that committee?
You could
Or-
serve on that committee, yes.
Well, I'm particularly interested in their, I think they called it the Boomer, I can't remember what it was, but it really was talking about initiatives that communities could take to make sure, and it ties in with housing for folks as they get older. So that's
So-
the piece that was of particular interest to me, but I don't know how.
So this
how
Wednesday is the
involved they
next
are.
Dr. Cog meeting, so you can come and sit in the back as a participant. When I say the back, you have to be in the
Right.
audience. You can't sit at the board table. Only one representative could sit at the table. So I can talk to you about that some more, Sandy, if you're
Okay.
interested in that.
Finance Committee is Committee of the Whole Board. It's an important topic. It's development of the budget for the upcoming year, so we encourage all board members, if they can, to attend that. And those meetings vary depending on board members' schedule. Jefferson Parkway or the Northwest Corridor, it's monitored and attended by staff as needed with updates to the board.
Didn't we used to have a board member that would go to those meetings?
Well, I don't.
That's the West Connect. I
But
think.
before West Connect
Yeah.
started.
I don't think so.
What's happening with this one? When was the last time they meted? What's the last, can you tell I haven't had dinner? When's the
some more
last time
cookies.
they met?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I can find out.
because,
and
yeah,
provide that
I
to you.
would, Yeah, I would like the trustees to be notified when there's a
Sure.
meeting.
Okay.
I've not
of
heard
this.
anything about
I
Yeah.
have.
that group, so I
Yeah,
don't.
West Connect is kind of taken over
Yeah.
as far as.
Except then they sort of say they are really not getting into that.
Oh, that's
Right,
just being
yeah.
politically correct.
So I'll provide that information to the board, so you
Yeah.
have that as far as the next meeting. The Louisville Superior Library Board, as part of our agreement with the city of Louisville and our contribution of 1.5 mils of revenue every year, we are allowed one member from the community to be on the board, library board. And Rita is our current representative, with Sandy being our alternate.
And Rita just took over for.
I took over for Deb, so if anybody wants that, I'd be absolutely willing to allow that participation. And now, yeah, so, and that meets every other month. We just had a meeting last week, and
Yeah.
then, so it meets every other month. And then the other thing is that the library board is perfectly agreeable to us allowing at least one resident, or maybe more if they want, but one resident to actually participate on that board as well. Not vote, but, you know,
Right.
it's very rare when they have to vote on something.
Right.
It's really more of a just gathering together. And Daryl McCool's has gone with me the last two meetings, because she would like to be the resident that's named on that. And she's got her little library in front of her
Right.
house. So she's been very, she's participated greatly and has added value in the last two meetings. She just was there last week and then 2 months ago as well. So I don't know how we formalize that, but we should formalize that in some way that.
Can
we're-
she function, can the resident function as the alternate?
Yes, they
Okay.
said that, now, last week, when we went there last Thursday night, they said you only have one vote, they don't care. They don't care.
That might be.
It's up to us to decide that, it's not them to decide, yeah.
Yeah, Kim's just gonna double check on that.
So does anybody want library board?
But they don't care, it's up to us.
Isn't that what we're trying to see, is that anybody wants it?
Well, I definitely have an interest in that area, but, I also don't want to usurp anybody
I think she might
else's
like to be
desire,
usurped.
but I definitely would have a strong interest in that area.
Well, then you got it, okay.
Usurpers
Sandy,
usurpers
usurpers
welcome.
are welcome, yeah. It's
Usurping.
actually an interesting, they've got a lot of things going on. Like I said, the library is very active. And, anyway, so I think that would be great.
The next two, Metro Mayor's Caucus and Mayor's Commissioner Coalition, typically are the mayor and the mayor pro tem, whoever those two are. Unless the board would like me to change it, but that seems to make sense. Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meets during the day. I've listed the months that they have typically met, typically from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Rocky Mountain Regional Airport.
Yep.
Joe Sorelli was the rep, and that spot's vacant.
I would respectfully ask to be the rep.
I think that's an appropriate thing.
Yeah, I would actually like to be the rep too. I've been Joe's second fiddle for 6 years, and have wanted to be the rep from nearly the beginning.
We have 2 reps.
One rep and one alternate.
Certainly both attend the meetings. I mean,
Right.
the meetings are open to whoever. I mean, is it a voting, is it a voting thing?
Yes.
It
Yes.
is a voting.
One vote.
Yeah, one vote, yeah.
Per member.
The reason I want to be the rep is to bring forth advocacy for the communities to the board. Right now, that board is mostly a listening board to the DOE director. And it's very hard to get actual advocacy going, and there are a couple of members who do that, and that's what I bring to it. You've seen me advocate on Rocky Flats for a number of years now. So I feel strongly about it as well. So, can we flip?
Can you reverse, one, go every other time or something?
I don't know if you can alternate.
Absolutely, you have a primary, and then you have the alternate. If the primary doesn't go, the alternate is the voting person.
That's correct.
Right.
So that is absolutely an option.
And I know I've gone the last 3 meetings, I think. I just went a week or so ago, or October 31st, yeah, it was on Halloween. And that one, there's usually a lot of people in the back, but what was interesting about that is all of the discussion at that meeting was, everything was pushed out from DOE. And there was nobody challenging that report. And so some of us stood up and said, wait a second, especially when they were shutting it down. Lisa Morzell, who was the chairperson at the time, said, okay, we're done. We reached our 12 o'clock noon deadline. And I said, wait, no public comment. Wait a minute. We got public comment. And there were a lot of questions we wanted to ask of the DOE, several of us, and me, and Sandy, you, I know, spoke, and I had my own comments and questions. And I think that stewardship council really needs to be where the stewardship, the members start being stewards. And I don't know how that's going to happen for sure, because there's a lot of people there, but they all just sit around there and listen, and there's nobody pressing. And, we got to have, I'm not saying you wouldn't do that, and you've been the alternate, it's been primarily Joe, but we got to flip that. We got to help flip that, in that the stewardship council starts being stewards of Rocky Flats and not just listeners of a 1992 report, which was amazing to me. I'm sitting there, there's all these DOE people in the back. I'm going, are you telling me that that presentation that's being made is from like 15 years ago or 20 years ago? What about the current data? And they go, well, we don't need to do current data because that's what our government said back 20 years ago.
Well, all of them, all the 16 communities, the council members and whatnot rolled over with that comment. And so
I just want whoever's there has to
We
be
have to be
someone that's going to get
advocates.
in there and start shaking them up, because the 3 times I've gone now has just been absolutely no ability to impact anything or influence anything that's being, because nobody does anything. And if you read and I got challenged on this by one of the DOE guys in the back of the room. I said, well, I'm reading what the objective and the scope of responsibilities are for the Stewardship Council off of their website. He goes, none of that is true. They don't know that they don't have any of those responsibilities. And that's when I have a federal government agency telling me as a representative of a town that's impacted by this, that we on this Stewardship Council have no ability to impact, and what was on the website, he said, is not true. None of that is true. They don't have any responsibility or authority to do anything. And I said, then why do you have this farce of a meeting? And so someone needs to get in there and actually be a force to be reckoned with and try and influence that Stewardship Council into doing something rather than just sitting there and letting them force feed us a report.
I agree, because Rocky Flats is, the single most polluted site in Colorado, perhaps in the country, and poses the biggest public health threat for all of us here in Superior and in surrounding communities. And we're about to have a federal government have a change in power, have a Congress that's controlled by the same party, and I think we're going to have a change in the DOE and Department of Interior in terms of what they think is important. So I think it's absolutely critical for us to have somebody, be a fierce advocate for the town of Superior on the Stewardship Council. I would volunteer for it, but I know that I just can't give up that amount of time on a Monday during the business day. But I think whoever the appointee is going to be needs to be an advocate and a strong one.
I think everybody's clear on how I feel on
So,
the Rocky Flats issue.
Can I recommend we circle back to this one? I
Okay.
think we can make pretty good progress on the others. The RTD board, that's something that's attended by staff as needed, depending on the topics being discussed by the board at that time. The Superior Louisville Joint Issues Committee, this was a committee that was formed when we were having discussions and issues with regard to what we were going to do with the interchange. And then we had good progress and decided to keep it in place. Both the city of Louisville and us decided it was good to keep communications going with their elected officials on different issues other than just the interchange. And so we've kept this committee. Joe and Elia were our representatives on the committee, so we have 2 vacancies. Sandy was the alternate, and the next meeting we've already tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, the 30th at 8:30 a.m. for your.
Is there flexibility around the scheduling of that meeting, or that's going to happen?
Typically, there is flexibility, but we've tried to keep it around the same time of the, about the same time frame of the month.
Are you asking
when-
about that specific day?
No, I'm asking about 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
That's what works best for them usually. Yep.
Could it be earlier, or would that work for, is that what you're asking, or what is a time that seems more reasonable?
Well, as I look to where I could fill in, I think about a couple things. Number one, just my own personal bandwidth, just with the commitment of here as well as being employed, and still traveling. So, but the workday knocks it out for me. I wouldn't be able to participate. I mean, I could be, I'm sort of thinking of a role of the designated hitter, the floating alternate where necessary. Because as I look at these, I don't see any, I'm interested in a number, but from a timing perspective, from a scheduling perspective, I'm struggling personally.
I think Chris and I get to invoke the seniority thing on this. This has always been divvied to the senior members of the board.
Yeah, we
Are
kind
you
of,
interested in
yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely. 'Cause we
I'm
gave in to
interested
Joe and Elia last time.
as well. I
Yeah.
think that's a good,
I think y'all have good conduct.
And then put
concept.
Kevin on as an alternate, if that's what you.
And Kevin's.
No,
the
he
alternate.
said designated hitter.
Well, that's what, isn't that kind of like the same?
Utility player would be a
Utility
better.
player.
Okay.
To fill in when others can't.
Yeah, if I'm around and available, I'd love to participate there, so.
Okay. Urban Drainage is the regional drainage authority for.
You
What,
didn't do
traffic,
transport.
transportation
Oh,
and safety,
sorry.
one
Yep.
spot?
Transportation and Safety Committee, we've modified this committee, they meet quarterly now, so we're trying to keep a schedule there. We have Chris and Sandy, and then we have one vacancy, Elia was the other member of this committee.
And this timeframe is adjustable. Sometimes it's different times, but it could be the, at 5 o'clock on whatever quarterly board meeting, so you don't have to commit another night. And I'm happy to give up my spot on it. This is a really satisfying, gratifying committee, because this is where all sort of transportation and safety issues around town come to. And, from putting red lights in, blinking lights, the school zone around Eldo. So if there are 2 of you who want to do this, I'm happy to stay and I'm happy to share.
I will raise my hand on that one as well. So.
Okay, you'd like it?
Yep.
Okay,
I'm interested as well.
okay. So I'll give up my spot and you guys can join Chris. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah, Jim.
I think that, yeah.
Sure, come on up.
Jim Payne.
Sorry.
I'm surprised this has been moved to quarterly. This is a meeting that is always very hard to find, and I've heard this comment from other people. It's not always properly noticed. It's
Right.
not publicized. As president of the HOA, I can tell you with the amount of comments that we hear about traffic and parking and just all the time, I can't believe that this isn't a committee that has a bigger role, has more, we're out there and publicized more, and that just
Right.
quarterly I don't think is enough. But I think if it were properly publicized and utilized for a role leading into the board, it would be much better attended and have more participation.
How often, it's not the attendance, and I agree with, we've been badgering this idea of e-blasting it out, and it never seems to happen. And every time I ask the same question, why isn't there an e-blast
So
out?
we've made those changes. And
Okay, good.
those-
But how often would you do it? Every other month?
Every other month at least. I mean, I can see maybe
Yeah.
monthly's not enough. and
Because
can
you
adjust
just
it as
added
you
that,
go, but-
Matt, right? The quarterly
Hmm?
is this on this? It's-
Quarterly,
Yeah,
yep.
it used to be as needed.
Right.
So,
That's correct.
so quarterly's improvement.
Right, and I would, an improvement over what it was.
Over, it was as
Well, it was
needed.
sort of- it was sort- right, it was very
Yeah,
erratic.
so it was really random. So,
I just, there's a lot of comment and activity that we hear about these subjects all the time.
Do you forward those comments, Jim, to the, because I've only been to one meeting, I just started on the traffic and safety, so I've never seen.
Well, it's hard to, it's one of my problems, it's hard to refer people. I used to do that all the time. I've sent people to those meetings. I used to attend them quite regularly, but then it became very difficult to even find out when they
Well,
were.
if they have, it can always be referred to Alex or someone in Public Works.
Well,
as well.
right.
Yeah.
But that's a little different role. I mean, I think that people who have specific problems, this truck is blocking the corner and this sort of thing. I'm talking about issues that people have, residential issues about traffic or,
Yeah.
that should go to this committee. That's what it's for. And I'm just saying it's a pretty vital committee. I'd like to see it meet more quarterly and be fully publicized.
And I'll just say that that's something that, I think all of us heard throughout our campaign is that, that we can all do better to communicate with the public and, increase transparency and let people know that meetings are going to occur. So whether that's through the e-blast and through the listserv or through, some paper mailings from time to time about just letting people know that meetings are scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, I think my staff does a considerable job in getting information out to residents.
Yeah, I'm not
through
saying it's a
e-blast.
bad job. I'm saying that there's always room for improvement.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. There's always, everybody receives communication differently. Some
Mhm.
like electronically, some like through the mail, some like to see it on TV, through Channel 8. So we try to hit all those, Facebook, social media, whatever we can to get the word out. And we've started televising all of our meetings, all the advisory committee meetings are.
I was just surprised at how many
Trees.
people did not know about the CAC listserv, about how many people did not know about our email blasts, about, there's a whole crop of people that we are missing in terms of the way we can communicate to them. So, because all of those are active, you need to actually opt in to get those communications.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are people that we're missing by virtue of just, we're enclosed in this bubble and we think that all these things are working, and they're great. They are working for some, but they're not working for all. And I think we just shouldn't lose sight on those opportunities.
To tag on to that, we all got a postcard about the,
Connected.
The app.
Stay
Yeah.
connected.
Stay connected, yeah, but it was too general for me. It didn't say the opportunities, specific opportunities to stay connected and how you get on each of those lists. Because once you put yourself on in the e-blast list and the CAC list, you get everything twice. And so before we put that next postcard out, maybe, I mean, somebody's got to review it more for the specific opportunities to get connected and the specific way in which to get connected. because this was too general for my liking.
Matt, I'd like to see this as a significant agenda item for the session on January 9th or
Yeah,
8th,
that's
whatever we
good.
agree.
Good
Yeah,
idea.
we'll provide you everything that we do to get.
No, but I mean, to talk not just about postcards, but I mean, how to talk about really engaging the community
Yeah, yeah.
more. And I mean, I agree, I was equally surprised by, you know, oh, did you see what was on the CAC or wherever? And people, what?
And just for the record, the CAC is not a town.
Right, I
Right,
understand.
I just.
Right.
that-
But I mean, it's a surprising amount of folks that just haven't figured out the best way to plug in, and it's incumbent upon us to find a way to help them.
Well, and to provide a little extra comment, attending the debates these guys were in, somebody came up with this idea, and I love it, a quarterly roundtable with residents, not unlike when you guys had over at the sports stable, where actually trustees can be up front and everybody asks the questions. And it's just informal, it's not a meeting, and. I think that was Kevin's idea. Yeah, whoever. Yeah.
Right, either way, I think it's,
But
I
anyway,
think it's a good idea, and let's spend some
that
time
could
on it
be
in January.
put on the
Yeah,
Jan
well,
9th, too.
Well, I understand that, and I only understand this because she happens to be my neighbor, that the town does have a consultant who's working with them on some communication issues. And I'm wondering whether she might be able to come in and, I mean, she happened to be the facilitator for our forum that we did over at the sports stable, and I think everybody was very impressed with the work that Kirsten Germundy did that night. And if there's a possibility that she might be able to be a part of our retreat in January and work with us to come up with some ideas and help us sort of deal with some of the issues. I mean, Kirsten, she was masterful at the forum, and, she's very, very talented, and so if there's a possibility, we might be able to bring her in. She might be able to help us with some approaches.
I would like to know how many people are actually signed up for the Sentinel and the E-Blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of get a feel for that, because I know the CAC, which is not the town, so that's not the way we communicate, isn't a great number of people on that. So I think we need to focus on our official town communication forums or social media, and figure that out, or even Facebook and things like that. Help people recognize that we have a Facebook, and is that all we have for social media right now?
Yes.
Okay, but, I think more people will be signed up on Facebook, or get it through Facebook,
Yeah.
if we can get them to.
To that end, I
Acquire
think
the-
we ought to have whoever is our new advisory or our liaison to the Youth Leadership Council, I think we ought to be having this conversation with our youth
Yes, that's a good idea.
to, see what is coming with, how should we be connecting with youth? And because it's probably not the channels that we're using, and
Clint, as a millennial myself, I can.
Well, some of them have interviewed, they kind of look at us kind of cross-eyed when we say something about some of these other. They
we
don't
start
even
talking about
know
fax
Twitter or-
machines and things
Yeah.
like
You
that.
know,
No,
guys,
they
now
don't-
that you
they don't
bring
do
that
Facebook
up,
or any of those things.
invite them to the darn retreat, because a couple of them just recently mentioned it. I'd like to know when we discuss this January 9th, have them there. Involve them, and I bet we don't get many more postcards in the mail after talking to them.
I think
Right.
Yeah, like, what's a
probably
mailbox?
Mark's twins probably are better connected than we are.
Yeah.
At
So,
4.
yeah, let's jumpstart all that and revisit all that, yeah.
Can I make one comment? Oh, go on. I think the next scheduled TSC meeting is December 5th.
Oh, that's right. December
So
5th,
keep that in
Traffic
mind.
and Safety.
And I
Committee.
don't know what time. It might be 7.
No, I
Yeah,
thought,
well.
I thought it said November 30th here, didn't it? Or what am I looking at wrong?
No,
it
not
was
for the
December, I think
TSC.
that's right, December 5th, but I thought it was earlier than 7.
I can be the alternate on that if some of you can't make it. And that raises the issue that.
Oh, it is 7. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to raise just in general, as we get down to the town committees, I really suggest we have a designated alternate, like for OSAC and ProStack and whatnot, in case the primary can't make it. So on traffic and safety, it is not productive for two of you to meet. I will tell you that. You need at least three to make it a productive meeting. So if you can throw me down there, Matt, as an alternate.
Okay. US 36 Community Solutions. This is a group of businesses and governments that meets at typically the months that I've provided in the morning, and that's just open to all board members.
Do you go to that, Clint, usually?
I go to about half of them, if not more. Usually once or twice a year, I'm presenting at it, and then others I'll just go to and attend. So yes, I attend as many of those as I can.
I thought that, so when I get them, I just basically
Well-
flip
And,
through
and
'em. I don't
anyone's
even-
anyone's open. It's an open meeting. I mean,
I know it's an open meeting,
uh,
but I don't think I need to, I don't want to spend the time going.
Right.
If you're,
Right.
unless, we need to have.
I
more
will
people there.
I will let the board know if I'm not able to attend and there's
Something
topics
of-
of, because sometimes it's, different topics.
I have gone
more
to
important.
a handful of those, and they are good meetings.
Yes.
And for the DRCOG person
Yes.
and the general trustee who wants to get educated in DRCOG-like regional issues, these are always well-run. You get a free continental breakfast. They're over here at the First Bank Center, so you don't have to go very far. And you can usually carpool with whoever else is going. So I just suggest people go, just in general.
They're very well attended by municipalities from around the region. There's usually several state representatives, state senators there. There's CDOT, there's RTD people. I mean, Audrey DeBarros runs that organization and does a very good job of getting attendance at that. They're doing a legislative breakfast in January, and that's also very well attended.
That one
too.
I recommend everybody go to. That's phenomenal. All the elected state house people try to make that, a lot of them.
Yes.
And it's a good meeting.
The date, I'll give you the date that has been set.
Yeah, and we've gotten emails about that already.
Okay.
On our, but the new board members elect have it probably, but we get those emails regularly. And
Yes.
I've seen that one about the legislative thing. You'll get a lot of emails from a lot of different groups.
Okay, we move on.
West Connect Coalition, this is a coalition of governments, including Jefferson County, City of Boulder, Boulder County, the town, Arvada, Broomfield, and they're working on regional transportation issues within our area, and then heading south towards Golden and C-470, those different areas. Right now, Sandy's our rep, and Clint is the alternate, with Alex being our staff technical person.
This is a group who's, they're still trying to get their feet on the ground, but has the potential to have a huge impact on regional transportation issues around here. And of course, the elephant in the room is always Jefferson Parkway, which has been officially taken off the table here, but keeps being mentioned all the time. So I feel we have to be very vigilant with this coalition. I'm happy to keep the representative on it.
And I'm happy to take myself off of it, not because I don't feel like it's important. I totally agree with you, but I go to a number of other transportation-related meetings, so it's a little bit of duplication there, and just to open up the opportunity to others that might want to be an alternate, or I'm fine staying as an alternate, so either way.
Well, I will sort of bias the discussion, but I really think somebody with DRCOG-oriented stuff is good on this
Yes.
committee. I sat in, like I said, 2 years of DRCOG meetings, so I've got that in the background, and it's just such a natural fit with DRCOG. So how did we decide the DRCOG? Rita, you and Mark? Did you sign up for DRCOG?
Not yet. Sandy is also interested, and
Oh, okay.
I'm fine deferring to Sandy.
I'll defer.
No, I'm
I'll
deferring to you.
defer. You're already downtown.
But they can both do it, right? She can do aging and he.
But I could go in
you're
and
kinda
just
talking
on
about
the
two
aging
different
We can find out,
stuff,
you know,
so
you
we
might
could-
be
I
able
could
to
connect
work
on
with
that piece. I
Jalen.
think that's where I'd be
Oh,
most,
lots of work on DRCOG.
yeah.
Are you interested, Rita?
I don't mind doing that West Connect, it does fit. And Alex is both the technical person at DRCOG and on West Connect.
Right.
And there are a lot of synergies. And like Clint was saying, that we tend to have all these groups doing kind of the same thing. And, you know, and there's overlap, or even when we talk about legislative things. Everybody seems to want to have some kind of say in the legislative session that's coming up and whatever is being done. And I always looked and say, okay, which of these groups actually have a paid lobbyist? Who's actually a good paid lobbyist, not just someone who occasionally pops their head up during the legislative session? And I gotta tell you, the DRCOG lobbyists are pretty good. And having actually hired and paid lobbyists myself when I worked at US West, you know, finding a good lobbyist, paid lobbyist, is not easy to do. So I always look to these organizations, if they have paid lobbyists that are, you can, you feel comfortable with, then I think participate, but otherwise just kind of monitor what's going on with legislative activities. But DRCOG definitely has a good handle on legislative things that are going on at the
So,
session.
but on West Connect,
Yeah, I already said
Okay.
yes, but I'm just
Okay.
adding, because we were talking about legislative, like
Oh, okay.
US 36 and some of these other, and you were saying,
Yeah.
Clint, that there's a lot of overlap. And I
Yes.
tend to see a lot of overlap. And some of you, some of the elected officials go to all of these things. You know, then they show up at DRCOG and they'll say, well, did you talk to Clint about what we did at the Metro Mayors? And did you talk here? And, and then
Herb.
everybody, Herb mainly.
Yeah.
So.
So, of the 5 established committees, we have the Open Space Advisory Committee with Sandy as the board liaison. Parks, Recreation, Open Space
go
and
ahead.
Trails, Chris is board liaison. Recycling Committee was Joe, so we have a vacancy. And Joe was also the liaison for the Historical Commission. And then the Youth Leadership Council, we have a vacancy because Evie was that designated board liaison.
and I am happy to give up OSAC if somebody wishes to take that over. Because what's not on here is the Cultural Arts and Public Spaces Committee,
Right.
which I would like to put a lot of my energy into.
I'd like to do the Youth Leadership Council.
Great.
Well, I'll speak up and say, obviously, I would like to do ProStac, but I know Chris has done it for many, many years. And so if Chris wants to stay, obviously, I'd have to defer to him. But I would like to see us have maybe the alternate to the committee. So then if Chris doesn't think he'll be there, that I could be there. But I've actually, I've been involved for 4 years, and I've been very involved on the indoor research that we've done, and I think that's going to be a big topic that's going to come to the fore in the new year, and I think there's some continuity that I could provide there. So I have a very strong interest in ProStac.
So Chris, are you wanting to do both, or what do you think?
I mean, if we want to spread the wealth, I really want to do the Youth Leadership Council. So if the rest of the board would like to me to step down from ProStac, then I would, in order to do the Youth Leadership Council.
I think it's good if we can let people fit in things that fit for them from a time perspective and an interest. And there aren't too many committees. So if we have somebody that can fit it and you want the youth, then I think it would be good to let Sandy do
Yeah, I
that.
mean, with arts, we're gonna have 6 committees and 6 board members. So, I mean, there's
So I think Clint
Enough
has
to-
to take over open space.
Enough to spread the peanut butter around.
And there's 7, remember, Clint, you're not 6.
Any
board
interest in
members,
open
there's 7.
space? I certainly will.
You're considered a trustee.
Keep it going. It's in a nice spot right now, but, any interest, anybody open space? So,
I can take open space. I just know that the historical commission, I definitely can't make that work. And the same thing with the recycling and conservation,
Right.
that's just gonna be a little tight at 5:30, but I could make the open space meetings.
okay, good. Are you interested?
I love open space.
Okay. And I will,
Good
I
answer.
will,
I
I
know
can
you
be
want to go to
the,
the snake event, so.
I can be the alternate on OSAC for when you can't make it.
And you can say Chris as the alternate on ProStac, if we're going to name alternates too, you know, if that's something that we want to do. And I can take the historical committee meeting if,
That one's
'cause
just tough because
that's
of
a
the time
tough
of
one on
day.
a Friday, yeah, at 10.
And that's, you can ask that time be changed, too, you know, as.
To 11?
Yeah, or noon.
Or
They'd love a-
9?
they'd love a
Yeah.
lunch
I would
meeting.
say 8?
Yeah.
They'd love a lunch meeting.
As long as we brought the lunch,
Right.
whoever the.
Old Chicago,
Yeah.
2-hour
Then,
lunch.
So, recycling committee?
Who doesn't
Jim
have one?
always goes.
Who doesn't have one?
I
can always
can't,
come
I
back
can't
to
do
it
that one.
As well.
What's it?
We can always come back to this one.
Okay.
In cultural arts?
Well, you-
Once we establish the committee, then we'll figure that
Okay,
out.
I would like to be penciled in on that
Okay.
one.
I don't think anybody will argue that, so pencil yourself
I'd
in.
like to help on the cultural arts, but.
Okay, well, you can,
Committee.
okay.
Okay, good.
You can be the alternate then.
Sure.
And participate when you can.
Well, I feel like I'll be alternate on a few, and I do mean that. So where just with my schedule, it's tough for me to commit every other Thursday or so, so.
Mhm. And I think it's good to get a feel for, you know, how it goes and all that, so I understand that we shouldn't, you know, we're not demanding those of us that have been here for a little longer than you, because it is hard to be able to get away for some of these daytime meetings. You can't set your own schedule all the time, you know, and these are meeting regularly, like the historical committee. And it wouldn't be the end of the earth if someone can't make it, you know, if there isn't a trustee liaison, but at least as regularly as possible, if, you know, can make it. And I'll do that one, that's fine. I've did it before, not since I've been but when I was a resident, I used to always go to the historical, years back, the historical committee, when I moved my office out here to Interlochen, but
You got it, Rita.
I got it.
As a follow-up earlier to the earlier conversation about the US 36 Commuting Solutions legislative breakfast, is January 5th, 7:30 a.m. at the Omni, Broomfield. And that is a reservation, paid breakfast thing, so the town can register you, but it's not just it's not like their membership meetings where you just show up
Right.
without a reservation. This one is a seated deal.
So Matt, can you send that all out to all of us? 36 commuting
Yeah.
solutions,
Yeah, yeah.
so that,
I think we've gotten it already, but he can send
but,
it again.
yeah, I mean, in terms of a personal email about how to get tickets, are you gonna order those, or do we?
We can make
Yeah,
reservations
yeah.
for the board, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Could just make an observation on RCAC, because I attend those meetings as a liaison for the HOA. And when we originally, and I was part of that, when all the committee chairs and board members met to set up this current system, and current system of liaisons. Actually, it wasn't even part of the plan that trustees attend all of the meetings. It was to have someone that designated who a committee could go to. And it's worked out that you all attend the meetings, which is fantastic. But RCAC is certainly would want a trustee designated, and I know you said you'd come back to it, but of course Martin from the town management staff covers that meeting, so it's very well covered and coordinated. And but I will point out that there is a fairly significant budget that's associated with RCAC, so it is one that you'd want to have well covered. But I don't think it's always necessary that a trustee be at each of these meetings, as good a goal as that is. So, just an observation.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Okay, we're approaching the witching hour, so
Yes.
are we, you got holes that we have to fill here, or?
Let me just run through real quick and you can let me know if I have this wrong. County consortium of cities would remain as listed along with the Colorado Municipal League.
So no interest, no takers on the CML? Okay.
Silence is a no?
I can cover that if, I mean, you can put me on that.
Well, that would probably be pretty good, particularly if you're interested in applying again for a CML.
Yeah, I'm considering that.
Yeah, no, so that
Sure.
would be a good
Okay.
fit.
Yeah,
if
thank
that's
you.
okay.
Denver Regional Council of Governments, Rita as the representative and alternate.
Before we
No.
change, well, I'm sorry,
I'm gonna rescind my
offer?
original.
Interest?
Yeah, I think if I take the second Wednesday and then the third Wednesday.
Your marriage might suffer.
Yeah.
It adds up.
And then,
It does
and
add
then, okay, and then Sandy, you can go and we can figure out, Sandy Hammerly.
Okay.
About, because particularly the AAA is very interesting group, so I'd like you to get to know them. And then you can decide if you're gonna be the alternate, or if you wanna just take it right now, that's fine. Are you taking it, Sandy?
I would prefer not to commit at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
like to go to a meeting.
So Matt, when are
and
we
see
going
how
to
well
actually
it is.
finalize these, vote on them at the next meeting?
The 28th.
So, okay, all right.
Okay. Let's see.
You know what, I can't do it. It's pro stack. Same
Yeah,
night as
it's
pro
right.
stack.
Yeah, it is pro stack.
I couldn't go
On a
to
Wednesday
Dr.
night?
Cobb.
Okay.
There, you got it back, Mark.
So
Yeah.
the alternate would remain.
And pro
Steve
stack's
Pennington.
definitely my preference.
Which one
so.
do you prefer, Tuesday?
No,
What-
that's okay, because I generally always go anyway, so it's,
Okay.
well, that's another reason why you probably want to put your name down as alternate, because I generally usually always go. But,
I'm happy to
Sandy's
stay as
staying there
alternate,
as
but
alternate.
I've never had to go since Rita's been here for 2 years because she always goes.
Yeah, or I go twice a month, I go for,
Okay.
you
Well,
know.
you can put me down as an
The
alternate
alternate, yeah.
for Dr. Cog. I mean, I think it would be interesting, but I don't want to overcommit and then
Right, right.
not be able to perform.
Well, if you get overcommitted here with her, I can cover the OSAC meeting for you the following week.
Okay.
If it's, if it becomes too much.
You would
So
find
put
it-
him as the official
You would find it
alternate.
very interesting, Mark, and a great group to get engaged in. You know, but
It
you,
is.
but don't worry about attending all the meetings that I'm attending, because it's a little,
How long do the meetings run?
they start at 6:30 and they go till 9.
The library board, I have Sandy Hammerly, with the alternate being.
I can be the alternate. I'm sort of there with Kevin being the alternate a lot, but just back up. I have experience with it. My thing is I can just step in because of the experience I have with it.
Well, if we're going to have the
Or-
citizen representative, the citizen representative could not vote instead, if I were not there.
Well, we haven't determined that from they don't care from
Okay.
over in Louisville side. Across the street, they don't care. You just get one vote.
I think we need to check the IGA too.
That's up to us to decide what we want to do.
Well,
as
and
a-
here's the thing, if we determine we will allow our citizen representative to vote, then I'll just drop off as alternate, you know.
I've
very
gone to
easy.
3 meetings now, and we've never had a vote.
Yeah,
So-
it's not a heavy
and it's been-
voting group.
It's
Okay.
not a voting group.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be either board
Yeah,
member or
okay.
resident. You just only
So-
get one is the point.
But I like that idea, actually, of getting a resident involved, and then I just drop out of the picture, so. no
We'll
problem.
list you as an alternate now unless we make a change. The next two are just simply the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Rocky Flats Stewardship Council. I have Chris and Sandy both interested.
I'm pretty passionate about this one, so, you know.
Well, there was the idea floated of one of you is the primary and the other is the alternate, and then you alternate meetings. Is that
I don't see the
palatable?
value of that. This group really, I think, there are just a couple of people on there who I think if we work with, we will have a repurposed group that is a much better advocate for this region in terms of these issues. And so I don't think rotating meetings will give the necessary oomph to try to affect things, because they only have meetings now quarterly.
Mhm.
I mean, or 5
Yep.
times a year. So I don't think you'd have the necessary oomph, whatever that's called, to affect some change in mission statements and that kind of stuff. So,
Yep, I'm not ready to give it up either, though. So,
how about we
Rock, paper,
talk about
scissors.
this off camera and
Rock,
see if
paper,
we can
scissors.
figure out a way to deal with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Joint Issues Committee with the City of Louisville, I have Chris and Sandy with Kevin as the alternate.
DH. Yep.
Transportation Safety Committee, I have Kevin, Mark, and Chris with Sandy Pennington as the alternate. And then West Connect, did that remain as is? No, that changed. West Connect with Sandy Pennington as the primary and Rita as the alternate. Open Space Advisory Committee, Mark as the liaison with Sandy as the alternate. ProStack, Sandy Hammerly as the primary with Chris as the alternate. Historical Commission, Rita, and Youth Leadership Council, Chris. And no decision on recycling committee. And then the Colorado Municipal League was the late one, that was Clint switching.
You can name a surrogate resident. RCAC.
We can come back to that one as well.
We can come back to that one.
That one in Rocky Flats.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad we met on this, because this is 2.5 hours that we won't be spending on the 28th talking
Right,
about
yeah.
this, so good work, everyone. Okay, anything further?
Just that as soon as we hear from the county, we'll let everybody know, just confirming what I think everybody has assumed, so.
What was the last count I saw was Sandy and Kevin were exactly 1899?
Yeah, that changed slightly.
I'm 3 ahead of Kevin right now.
Oh, really?
I've got a few more in the mail, though.
And I'm
Your
bringing
own
the
personal
dinosaur
one?
out,
Yeah.
so.
You found some under the bed.
Yeah.
The
That's
deadline
true.
is the 22nd, so. I have
Okay.
to have it done by then.
They have to certify.
All right. Okay, thank you, everyone.